All right, we are ready to get started. Today is Tuesday, March 24th, 2026, and this is the City Council's work session. I am calling this meeting to order and giving notice to the public and to the City Council that at this work session, we may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion and consultation with the city's attorneys for legal advice on any item listed on the following agenda. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Daggett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sweet,
Here.
Councilmember Aslan,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember House,
Here.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
Councilmember Spence.
Here.
Councilmember Aslan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Councilmember Matthews, could you read our mission statement?
I'd love to. The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Councilmember Spence, do you have our land acknowledgement handy?
The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. Next up, we have open call to the public, which enables the public to speak on any item that is not on today's prepared agenda, and there is a timer right here in front. And we have CJ Perry here with, it looks like, an entire robotics team. Would you like them all to come down with you?
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. You all know me in my role here as CIO, but tonight I'm stepping out of that role and here on behalf of our Flagstaff robotics community. I'm grateful for a few minutes to share something I believe reflects the very best of what's happening in this city. So tonight I want to tell you about 3 Flagstaff student robotics teams that are heading to world-class competitions and how their success is part of a larger story about Flagstaff becoming a recognized leader in STEM education. So first off, the Coconuts are Coconino High School's first robotics competition team, the largest and most advanced level of the first competition, where high school students design and build full-scale robots. I invited Christine and Dave to join us tonight, but as we sit here, the team is actually en route to Boise, Idaho for their next regional competition. As the Arizona North Regional, or at the Arizona North Regional at NAU Skydome, the Coconuts placed 3rd out of 55 teams. They were captains of the 2nd-seeded alliance and advanced all the way to the semifinals. So after Boise, they compete in Denver, and then they head to the first World Championship in Houston, Texas, as part of the prestigious first Hall of Fame after taking first place at the World Championship 2 years ago. Next, I've got the Flagstaff Warrior Bots, and I've got a couple of students here from the Warrior Bots who compete in the First Tech Challenge, a division designed for smaller schools, but every bit as much skill, strategy, and heart. This season, they competed in 3 regional tournaments and qualified for the Arizona State Championship. In FTC, teams are judged in 2 ways: the robot game itself and their STEM advocacy, how they've given back and inspired their community. While winning in one category often qualifies you for the World Championship, the Warrior Bots won in both categories. They received the Inspire Award, which is the highest recognition a team can earn for their work in supporting STEM in our community. And on the field, they were first seeded and went to completely undefeated through the playoffs to be on the winning alliance for the robot game. Their final score across all categories was 130 points. And for context, second place got 80 points. So they did extremely well at the Arizona State competition. So similarly to the Coconuts, the Warrior Bots will represent Flagstaff at First World Championship in Houston at the end of April, competing against the best teams in the world. Over 50,000 students from 66 countries will be there. Next up, we've got the Quantum Warriors. We've got this team right here. That's the team that I have had the privilege of coaching personally. First LEGO League is an entry-level first program, younger students, but the same values of teamwork, innovation, and impact. At the state competition, the Quantum Warriors placed second in their innovation project. That result qualified them for the first LEGO League International Invitational in Atlanta, Georgia in June, where they'll go head-to-head with teams from 20 different countries. What makes this even more meaningful is the trajectory we're on. Just 2 years ago, Flagstaff didn't have a single First Tech Challenge team. Today we have 3, from Flagstaff Christian School here, Basis, and Sonawa Middle School. All 3 represented Flagstaff at the state championship, just to show the high level of competition we have. In First LEGO League, the program I run has grown to 6 teams, the most we've ever had. 3 of those teams competed at state, and the Quantum Warriors are heading to that international competition. Flagstaff is becoming genuinely world-renowned in STEM and robotics. That's not an overstatement, that's what these results show. Part of what makes that possible is collaboration. The Warrior Bots, Basis, and Sonawa have formed the Flagstaff Robotics Alliance to support each other's growth. And I've personally been working with the Coconuts, FUSD, NAU, and Tinkertopia to find funding, facilities, and mentors to keep expanding what we can offer to Flagstaff students. I should also note that NAU will be hosting some STEM camps for students this summer regarding robotics, video game design, semiconductors, and civil engineering. So if anyone has students that are interested, let me know and I can get you some information on that. Now, none of this is possible without the people who show up for these kids. I want to take a moment to recognize a few of them. First, your own city staff. Matt Morales with the landfill came out and mentored a team working on a project around trash. Paul Rosevier, who's formerly with our GIS department, provided LiDAR mentorship for 2 teams. And he's since taken on a role running a drone program for a major firm, which tells you something about the level of expertise our kids got to learn from. And Nate C., our own service desk supervisor, stepped up and coached one of our youngest LEGO teams. I also want to thank parts of the community and the private sector. WeCom sent a staff to mentor a team focused on fiber and communication technology. And I want to give a very special heartfelt thank you to Tim Kinney with Kinney Construction and Gentera Enterprises. Gentera manages an office complex, and Tim graciously offered us a vacant office to use as a home base for our programs. Without that space, we simply could not have run the Warrior Bots FTC program or expanded to 6 LEGO League teams. His generosity has had a direct impact on the lives of dozens of young people in this city, and we wanted to thank him. So all 3 teams now are actively fundraising. The Coconuts need about $20,000 to compete in their world championship, and each of our FTC and FLL teams need around $10,000. So if you know anyone who'd like to invest in Flagstaff students, we'd love to connect. Now, I know this is public comment, so I want to recognize that the rules don't mean council can't respond or interact directly with the students, as I'm sure you all want to do right now. But I am working with the city clerk to schedule a formal agenda item for June, where the students themselves will come before council and share their experiences firsthand. We are so excited to bring them here. So thank you for the time and for your continued support of education and community in Flagstaff. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, you all. All right, next up we have Billy Gilmore.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. My name is Billy Gilmore. I live on West Putnam Drive here in Flagstaff in the Crestview community. And I'm here today just to give compliments and concerns. My compliments first are for the new community land trust homes that have been built in the Timber Sky community out in West Route 66. As a person who's benefiting from the CLT program, I appreciate seeing others having that same opportunity. Another compliment, I have recently understood that the council approved last month the construction of a temporary traffic signal at the junction of West Route 66 and Woody Mountain Road. And thank you, Councilwoman Matthews, for supporting that, and also for a unanimous approval from the council on that. Thank you. Again, as a resident in that particular area of town, in the Crestview neighborhood, my concern is that with the addition of the new construction that's going in on the south side of Route 66, we have numerous new developments out there, including the Sierra on 66 apartments, the new Timber Sky development that keeps expanding. Also, the new Live Sky cottages that are under construction, and the additional residences within that development. All of this new housing is definitely increasing the volume of inbound traffic on West Route 66 into Flagstaff. From Woody Mountain Road to Railroad Springs Boulevard, there are residents on the north side of 66 that are having difficulty entering eastbound traffic because of the volume of traffic that's headed east. So I was very happy to see that temporary traffic signal is being put up, and hopefully that the mega planning that's Metro Planning that's working on this project will consider putting in a permanent traffic signal. Even though roundabouts have a purpose and sometimes a benefit, I think it's necessary to stop traffic intermittently so that residents from the north side do have that opening to come into eastbound traffic. So again, that's my concern. Again, thank you, and I compliment you for your activity on transportation and housing in Flagstaff. Thank you.
Thank you. And City Manager, today we have a water capital update. Do we have a transportation capital update planned soon?
Mayor and Council, we will have a capital update during the budget retreat on April 23rd, likely the afternoon on the Thursday. We're planning on dedicating a couple of hours, and we'll add this project to the list as well.
That would be great. Thank you. All right, we're moving down now to review of draft agenda for the April 7th City Council meeting. Council, any concerns, thoughts? All right, then we will move on to March work anniversaries.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Shannon Anderson, your Assistant City Manager. We've got lots of people to celebrate this month, so we'll dive right in. Thanks again to Tiffany for the creativity that she demonstrates in putting these presentations together. I'm really enjoying the format. I hope you are as well. We'll start with our first year anniversaries, quite a few here, with our police department, our airport, the court, as well as information technology, human resources, the library, pros, water services. We've got folks across the organization that are celebrating their first year with the city, and so congratulations to this group of employees. For our 5th year anniversaries, we'll start with Terrell Bagley. He's one of our maintenance technicians within our facilities team, part of Public Works. We also have Derek Sossman, one of our fire engineers within the fire department. We'll have a couple of his peers as well here next. David Ortiz, a firefighter paramedic. Then we'll move on to our 10-year anniversaries. Christina, I'm sure you all recognize her as part of our city attorney's office. Congratulations to Christina. And then our last one today is Officer Pat Condon. He was going to join us, but he's been pulled away to a meeting with some of his fellow officers who work on narcotics. So we appreciate that work that he does on behalf of our community. But I'd love to tell you a little bit about Pat. He has served with the police department since 2006. He has built an exceptional career marked by leadership, courage, and unwavering dedication to our community. From his early days on patrol and as an original member of the King Squad to earning multiple commendations and Officer of the Year awards, he has consistently exemplified professionalism and compassion. His service includes vital roles in Metro Narcotics, the U.S. Marshals Task Force, the Honor Guard, and the SWAT team as a master operator. He has also revitalized the department's recruitment team. Officer Condon has also dedicated 15 years to the Arizona Narcotics Officers Association, now serving as its president, and helped establish the Flagstaff Law Enforcement Association. There's appreciation here extended for Officer Condon's service, his 20 years of outstanding service to the Flagstaff community. So that's what we have for you today, and love to just congratulate all those celebrating this month in March. So thank you to everyone. We'll see you again next month.
Thank you. All right, we are moving down to water capital update.
Mayor, while we have the team walking up to get their presentation set up, I just did want to just give council, mayor and council, just an update on kind of the plans with the capital updates. If you recall, we I think for several years did a kind of an all-day capital retreat. And the thought is to give these capital updates during council meetings, and then also, put a few within the budget retreats. But just to make sure we have more of an opportunity to update you and update the community throughout the year on capital projects. So with that, Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, City Manager, and good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm here to maybe I just need to talk closer to it. All right. Thank you, Lee Williams, Water Services Director, here to give our Water Services capital update, and I have my team behind me who are going to give their sections of it. I'll start with an introduction. So Water Services has a whole lot going on, and I would like to thank you for approving the rate increase. We have used that money I hope wisely, to move these bigger projects forward. Some of these projects that you see today have been on the books since 2015, so for over a decade. So between the rate increase, some nudging from Shannon Jones, previous Water Services Director, and City Manager's Office, we've identified projects that are critical to the working of our system. So if it's necessary for growth, capacity, security, not having a moratorium on development, these are how we've identified the most important projects and isolated those and moved some funding around to keep them moving and get them built. So with that being said, I'm going to allow our project managers to come up and tell you what they've been up to. We'll start with, we're not in, let me get into the right mode here. Here we go, our Wildcat Interceptor. So Jackson Salazar is going to come up and tell us a little bit about the new sewer line.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll run through my 3 projects here, starting with the Wildcat Interceptor. So as you may know, the Wildcat Interceptor project replaces about a mile of sewer that's currently a 33-inch sewer, and it's going to be upsized to a 48-inch sewer. And that's taking place from the south side of I-40 up to the Wildcat Hill water reclamation facility. We're currently in construction, and we've completed 1,700 feet of the total, about 5,450 feet. of the project. We got a couple pictures up here. The first one's just a pipe in the trench on one of our first sections. We got me standing there with one of the manholes that is so heavy they have to use a crane to lower it into the trench every time. And then third one's kind of after we finish the trench and everything, kind of cleaning up the project site there. Yeah, that's that one. And I'll give some time for questions after I run through these three projects, so if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so my next project is the Rio Solids Handling Facility. This project's at our Rio de Flag treatment plant, and the project is going to provide a new solids handling facility at the Rio plant, and it's going to use low temperature dryers to process solids into a very light material that will then be hauled off to the landfill. So I've got a couple pictures on this project here. This one's kind of our conceptual design. This is a satellite shot of the Rio plant, and then down here in this kind of southwest corner will be where a new pre-engineered metal building would go, and that's going to house the dryers that are going to look something like this, and then kind of some conveyance systems to get them to dump into a haul-off dumpster. And I'll move on to one more. Oh, sorry. I forgot to mention. Design's currently at 60% on that project, and we're moving towards 100% plans here. And then my other project's the Switzer Phase 5 water line. This is the last phase of a five-phase project that replaces aging infrastructure up to our North Reservoir plant. This is also about a mile of, it's a dual pipeline, so two new pipes going in, paralleling each other, and it's going to connect basically the end of Phase 4, which is just north of the Elks Lodge, and then up to the North Reservoir plant. We're currently working on 90% plans and legal descriptions for property acquisition. So any questions on any of those?
Councilmember Matthews, then Councilmember Garcia.
So I've been out viewing the Wildcat interceptors. It was really fun. And I just want to put a plug in there. I missed the blasting because I had to travel. So if there's more, please let me know, because I can't wait to get my finger on that button. And the Rio de Flag solids handling, I also toured that. We had a tester out there, a new concept where they were drying the solids and stuff. So is that the concept that we're going to be using in this solids drying?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. So that kind of pilot program that we did at the Wildcat plant, it had kind of the similar dryer setup, but it was in like a shipping container type of thing. This will be like a full-on like metal building that'll house two bigger versions of that one that we saw out at the Wildcat. So yeah, it's very similar, same
And
technology.
do I remember correctly that the dried solids that came out of that pilot program, they were saying that they could be used for different fertilizer and stuff, and you mentioned that we're going to just take these out to the landfill, so.
Yeah, I think that's
Which I'm fine with not using dry solids for fertilizer, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different uses for biosolids. I think fertilizer's one. There's like biochar where you can, I think, burn it and produce energy with it. But the current plan is to take it to the landfill, but I think there's other opportunities for things to do with it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Good work.
Yeah, of
I
course.
was curious on your first slide there about the pipe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was like an equation when you're going from 36 to 48 or whatever the number was, as to like, population growth or anything like that per inch of pipe, or how do we figure that this is going to be the pipe that's not going to have to be replaced just because we have, more people coming in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, for both water and sewer, we do like a master planning effort, pretty much like every 5 years or so. And so, yeah, we have like a build out kind of population, and that's what this one is designed to serve. It's pretty much like roughly like double the population of Flagstaff now, because yeah, once you get to, you don't have to double the diameter of the pipe to get a double the flow amount. Just going up that, I guess like 15 inches in diameter actually doubles the flow.
Nice, that makes sense, and it paints a good picture for me to understand that we won't have to go back and mess with the pipe until the pipe has kind of lived its life.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. Then if we can move 2 slides up, this one was an on-the-spot question that I didn't think of until now, and it's just a curiosity of mine. And I was curious how the reservoir gets fed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so these reservoirs, and there's like a filtration plant there, are fed by the inner basin. So all the water that comes down like Waterline Road from the inner basin ends up here and then is treated there and then pushed out to Flagstaff.
Excellent. So I've been up there on the tours and have seen the work that has been done on the inner basin, and this kind of connects the dots. So all the inner basin flow gets treated at this point.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you for that information.
Yeah, no problem.
I've got a question about the biochar. That's been on our list of congressionally directed spending for a couple of years. How does that fit in with the projects that you've talked about?
I think I'll call on my help here.
Thank you for the question, Mayor. The way it fits in is Water Services has a biosolids issue. We need to get rid of biosolids, so our main goal is to process those so that we can dispose of them. I am currently working with Nicole Antonopoulos from Sustainability on the congressionally directed funding, which would be a separate project, which we could then take the biosolids from our plants. We could take bio waste or biomass from the forest, the thinning of the forests, combine those two and produce biochar out of those two basically waste products to turn it into something that could be a fertilizer or a soil amendment or just much lighter to ship around so you can dispose of it more easily.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any additional questions. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Justin Emmerich, and I'm a project manager with Water Services. And I have a few projects as well, if I can figure out how to advance. Oh, down? So this is the Lake Mary Sedimentation Basins Rehabilitation Project. And this is based on a 2016 study by Brown and Caldwell condition assessment. We targeted the sedimentation basins for rehabilitation based on the importance of this infrastructure for producing our drinking water. We studied the mechanical, structural, electrical, instrumentation, and control systems at the Lake Mary plant, which is all based off of about a 1965 era of equipment and concrete. Let's see, Brown and Caldwell was hired to produce a set of plans for this rehabilitation project. And recently, PCL Construction was selected through a RSOQ process as the most qualified candidate to provide construction services to rehabilitate both of these 1 million gallon sedimentation basins. GMP number 1 for construction is $13.6 million, and that was approved by council late last year, 10/21 of 2025. If you have questions, please stop me and ask. Let's see. As you see here on this photo, that's one of the empty basins. That's the western basin. We can run the plant in 2 halves, so we can take one of those basins down for inspection and repair and things like that. So this project with PCL is going to replace a lot of the old concrete that dates back to that time frame. And we've had 2 concrete condition assessments in the last few years on the condition of those basins. And as you can see there, there's a lot of equipment and stuff that goes along with these basins, and all of that's going to get replaced and rehabilitated. We're going to pour back a lot of new concrete in those basins and replace a lot of the mixers and some of the equipment that you see in those basins there. This next project is the Lake Mary Raw Waterline Pipeline Replacement Project. And this project will replace 5 miles of 27-inch concrete reinforced bar-wrapped steel cylinder pipe, if I got the acronym correct. And this pipe also dates back to the early 1960s, 1963. And there's 5 miles of it that connect the Lake Mary Raw Water Pump Station to the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant that runs sort of in the forest north of Lake Mary Road for pretty much the entire run of that pipeline. And this pipeline has been subject to a lot of failures based on corrosion. And as you can see in the photo there, where we affected one of these repairs, you can see how rocky the conditions are out there. And that's sort of leads to why this pipe ultimately failed in the first place, was that they used some of that native material to rebed the pipe when they installed it. And that pipe, pipe will ultimately be subject to corrosion and abrasion from some of that material that you see in the trench there. And that pipe that you see on the right is actually one of the pipes that failed. You can kind of see a hole in the side of it there, and that's where just that phenomena happened. A rock sort of wiggled its way through that concrete and allowed corrosion to take place on the very thin steel cylinder of the pipe, leading to its failure. So we have an RSOQ process, and we selected Ardura Engineers as the most qualified firm to produce a design for the replacement of this pipe project. So right now, we actually just received the PO for Ardura today. So we're going to start with a kickoff meeting in the next couple weeks. Pretty exciting. Oh, I should mention that when we replace that pipeline, we're going to do it in sort of a parallel sort of fashion so that we can keep the existing pipeline in service to sort of limit our downtime when it comes time to replace this pipe. So we'll keep the original pipe active, and we'll just move a few feet to the west of it, and we'll stick in our new pipe. And when we get out to the plant, we'll just switch it and tie it over on both ends, and then we can transition to the new pipe. So that will limit the amount of downtime on the production of the water treatment plant. Fort Tuthill, well number 2 project. Let's see, we drilled well number 2 at Fort Tuthill back in 2021. And for 100 days, we drilled down to 2,500 feet to put in well number 2. And here's some of the drill bits that we used to actually do that. And there's actually a picture of the drill rig in the center there drilling. So this new well, we test pumped it out to about 400 gallons per minute, which is about 600,000 gallons a day into our water portfolio. So that's pretty exciting. We worked with a number of designers on this project with Atlas Corporation, and now we're working with Carollo to design a rehabilitation of the existing pump house to accommodate this second groundwater source. As you know, we have Fort Tuthill pump well number 1 out there, which is actually one of our best wells, one of our best producing wells. So we're just going to upsize the building just a little bit to accommodate this second water source. Very exciting project. And we hope to advertise that project pretty soon, so we'll get that started for construction, hopefully this fall. This next project is the reclaimed water bottleneck. And this is what we lovingly refer to as our bottleneck in our reclaimed distribution system. This is treated wastewater. And we're going to replace about 1.2 miles worth of 8-inch PVC pipe that goes from Buffalo Tank down to North Ellen Street. If you're not familiar where North Ellen Street is, it's one street west of 4th Street, just south of Cedar Avenue. So that 1.2 miles worth of pipe runs all the way through the neighborhood there, through Dortha, and over to Isabel and up Isabel around the high school, and then eventually up to the tank. And that piece of pipe there actually restricts our throughput from Wildcat to push water up to the tank to about 800 gallons per minute, or about 1.1 million gallons per day. So the plan was to replace this 8-inch restriction with 20-inch ductile iron pipe so that we can actually increase our throughput and allow Wildcat to meet an entire day's worth of demand of the reclaim system. So that's another pretty exciting project. Ardura helped us with that design based off of Turner Engineering's original design. And what we've done is we've spoken with CJ, and CJ's actually wanted us to put conduit along the entirety of this pipeline project. So we went back to Ardura, and we had them redesign in conduit that parallels this pipe replacement project all the way through from the tank all the way over to North Allen Street. So that's pretty exciting. That'll help CJ with his connectivity with the IT system throughout, and our fiber system throughout the city. This next project is the Lake Mary water meter replacement project. This project has been a long time in the making. Carollo Engineers Design. We finally just got started on this with Kier Civil, and we're actually replacing the final effluent meter of the Lake Mary water treatment plant so that we can more accurately measure the water that's actually being produced by the plant and by the Lake Mary well field. And what you see there is the meter with a same size bypass, so that if we ever needed to replace that meter, we could actually switch to the bypass. And that's another pretty exciting project. This next project is another one of our annual meter and vault replacement projects. This took place just this last fall. This is the NAU large meter project. This is the largest single meter serving NAU, all of campus. This is a 10-inch meter that meets all of NAU's fire flows. And this meter has been on our radar for many years, and we just now got around to replacing it because of funding. This was one of our most expensive meter and vault replacement projects. What we also did with this project is we ended up replacing about 650 feet of distribution line that runs all the way up the street, all the way up to Milton. If you're familiar with where Reardon and Reardon meet, I'm trying to think of what's near there. That gas station on Milton that goes right down Reardon, goes into campus. We replaced that whole 10-inch 1949 cast iron line. And we also installed a bunch of new fire hydrants and a bunch of new control valves. So we actually took care of a lot of wants with this 1 meter vault replacement project. And that's the meter and the vault that you see right there. That's that 10-inch with a bypass. And that picture there on the lower right is the finished vault. And we set it just above grade, just about a foot, so that we could actually keep stormwater out, because that was always a problem at this particular intersection. We always had a lot of snow melt and rainwater that collected and then filled up this vault and made it nearly impossible to work on. So we had them set the vault just a little bit above grade for this. That's actually a very exciting project for us. We're happy to get that one in. The Spruce Wash Water and Sewer Replacement Project. This project also was designed by Ardura, and it replaced about 240 feet of sewer line and water line. Old cast iron sewer line, 12-inch sewer line that ran underneath this historic trestle that you see right there. Are you familiar where the Speedway gas station is on Milton? Right at First Street? This is the water and sewer line that goes right underneath that trestle where the train tracks used to run. And so that was an old line that was subject to leaks. And this channel here is a stormwater channel. So what we did is we actually buried the sewer line and the water lines a lot deeper so that we could get below that scour depth of the channel and stay away from the same thing that plagued the original water and sewer lines. That was another pretty exciting project. And that was constructed by Summit Construction. And those guys did a great job for us. And they banged it out really quickly, on time, and within budget. It was an awesome project. I think that might be it. Any questions on any of those projects?
Councilmember Matthews.
Justin, these are all exciting projects. Thank you so much. Are all these projects, just to be clear, funded through the water rates increase that we approved a year or so ago? Is that where most of the funding's coming from, besides some grant money? Here comes Mac.
Thank you. That's a good question. Some of these projects, I think, predated that funding increase. Some of them had been on the books for a while, but things changed around COVID, and we needed additional funding to sort of carry out some of these projects because materials and everything skyrocketed. So I think the rate increase actually helped to actually bring a lot of these projects to fruition.
Great. The Lake Mary raw water pipeline replacement, does that water then go down and get treated at that treatment plant that we saw? I walk my dogs right behind there off J.W. Powell, and so you guys have been really noisy. I was asking Lee about it earlier. So that project of the construction, is that coming to an end soon, or?
Well, the construction that I think you're talking about is not part of the pipeline replacement project. We haven't started construction on that yet. We've just entered into a contract for design of replacement of our Lake Mary raw water line. And yes, to back up, you're right. That does take all of the lake water, and another line takes some of the well water from the Lake Mary well field, and it brings those two sources of water to the Lake Mary water treatment plant for treatment and then for ultimate distribution into the distribution system.
So currently, the construction, the noise that's going on there, it's not bothersome to me. It's just.
That might
okay.
be the meter and vault.
I was just going to say the vault meter.
I think that's the meter and vault project at the Lake Mary water treatment plant.
Yeah.
And you might hear us banging on some rock, trying to make room for that big vault that we had to stick in the ground.
Yes. So when you think it'd be most interesting, I've been wanting to tour that site for a while. So if you keep me in mind when you're at a point where it might be the most informative,
Sure.
Especially since it's down the street from where I live and stuff, I'd really like to see what's been done and what's happening down there. So
Sure, anytime you'd like to, please just give me a holler. I'd love
Okay.
to coordinate where we could all come out and have a look at some of these projects. I'd love to share these with you.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Councilmember Spence.
Thank you, Mayor. On your, excuse me, on the Fort Tuthill well, well number 2, what is the proximity of number 2 to well number 1? And what are the comparative depths that those wells pump from?
That's a great question. So they're both drilled to a depth of 2,500 feet, and they're 1,697 feet apart. So they are deeper, they're closer than they are deep. So, and I think I understand your question to be that is one well going to influence the other well, ultimately when we start pumping both of them at the same time, resulting in a more of a drawdown. And so far, we just don't have data on that because we haven't produced any water out of well number 2 just yet. But when we test pump the well and we watch the drawdown, we have great data on what those drawdown numbers are based on varying flow rates of test pumping. We test pumped it for 5 days, and we got up to 1,000 gallons a minute. We went as low as 300 gallons per minute. And we watched that recovery of that well. And from that, we get a good idea of what that specific capacity is of that particular well. And based on that data, we can actually make inferences about what the connectivity might be between the watershed, between the two wells. And so far, it doesn't look like we have any effect. Although, as I said, we haven't actually pumped it to production yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you, and your enthusiasm for these projects is infectious.
Thank you.
They're all very exciting. If you didn't get that, every single one was very exciting. Okay, so Ed Shank, I'm the Stormwater Section Director. I'll be going over some of the capital projects for the stormwater utility. Here's the list in no particular order, because we're not going in that order. Starting off with Spruce Wash suite of projects. You've heard a lot about this, and we're going to actually have a whole agenda item with this later this spring. So as you know, Scott Overton, Trevor Henry, and Julie Lead have been doing a great job as project managers, moving this suite of projects forward. So about 10 projects total, $26 million from Proposition 441, and another additional $14 million. I can't stress this enough. This is a huge win for the city. Additional $14 million from grants and other city contributions. So we're getting money out of several different pots to get this completed and get it completed under time. So it's really a great project or series of projects with a great story that goes with it. Slightly smaller project, the Santa Fe drainage lateral. So this is a project that's partially funded through a grant with the Army Corps Environmental Infrastructure 595 program at the tune of $1.2 million. We've been consistently attempting to get additional funding from that Killip Inlet EI 595 grant that we had to defer due to timing. So that's, hopefully we'll have some more good news coming, but if we don't, we still have 1.2 coming out of Army Corps, which is great. We're at 100% design. Our objective is to convey the 100-year flood from essentially Mars Hill, Lowell Observatory area, down Santa Fe, and into the new Rio de Flag project once that comes online. Geneva Lanzetta with Capital is our PM. And she's been doing a great job coordinating with the two other large projects that are associated with this, one being Downtown Mile, and then obviously the Rio de Flag project. So the coordination between the three makes it a little challenging, but also exciting. I'm going to go with Justin's there. It's very exciting. Yeah, so we're going with that. Another grant project, Mead Lane Drainage Project. This is in Lower Coconino Estates. So the objective here is to upsize the drainage. Right now, it's severely undersized. It has capacity for about 5 cubic feet per second, which is very low. And then also, while we're tearing into the street, it'd be a great time to do some other projects. We're also going to do a streets mill and overlay, as well as replace aging water and wastewater infrastructure. So we're going to do a full suite of improvements from Highway 180 to the Rio de Flag. This picture here is from that bridge on the Rio de Flag looking towards Highway 180. So we are at 100% design with city funding from stormwater, water, wastewater, and streets, and eventual funding from the FEMA HMGP programs, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program.
So one of my constituents asked me about this, and I was waiting for this presentation. Have we got the green light from FEMA on their part of the funding? Because I know the neighborhood is really concerned about getting this done before monsoons hit.
So there is some heartburn, not just with the residents, also internally and at the larger national level with the FEMA process at the moment. So to give some background, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program is a phenomenal program because what it does is it takes money out of FEMA and it gives it to the states to appropriate for state and federal disasters. And the reason why that's great is it's a much faster program than their previous programs that they had in the past. The problem that we've run into is that Arizona got their appropriated amount back in 2021 that we're pulling this money from. Unfortunately, with the change in administration at the federal level and the change in administration at the Department of Homeland Security, which is over FEMA, there was a complete pause on HMGP last year, not only with the allocation of money to the states that was priorly awarded, including this amount, but also a pause as of March 12th of last year on any new HMGP awards. So areas that had state and federal disasters that governors put into FEMA for reimbursement, usually in the tune to billions of dollars, were put on pause as of March 12th. So that has not opened up yet. Either the new stuff that's coming, the new money to new disasters, or the money that was already appropriated to previously awarded disasters at the state level. So for our particular one for Mead Lane, we are actually pulling from the Diamond Fire, if I remember correctly, which was a fire down in the Phoenix area. So the communities that were to receive that deferred on their funds. And when that happens, Arizona DEMA, Department of Emergency and Military Affairs, will then open up that pot of money to similar type projects throughout the state. So when we got that notice of funding from DEMA, we submitted for Mead Lane, knowing that there would be some funds available. So I'm giving you a whole lot of backstory here. The short story, the shorter story of this, we are still very hopeful that that will open up. The Secretary of DHS has changed very recently, and with that change, we've seen a little bit more communication from FEMA through DEMA, so we don't directly communicate with FEMA on HMGP. So at the DEMA level, and we're very hopeful that grant process will come back to what it used to be prior to about this time last year.
So just to finish that, it's 0.6 million pending. Is there any way we can, I mean, we only have a few months, right?
The likelihood of this being constructed regardless, even if we went forward, I don't know if you want to speak to this, by monsoon season would be very difficult.
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Matthews, I think Ed just said exactly what I was going to say, that at this time, we're not going to be able to get this project done before monsoon season. We have had some internal discussions that if we do not get the go-ahead on this grant by May 1st, that we will be identifying other funding to fund this. It's really unfortunate, and just know that it is a priority for the city.
Is it a possibility to be reimbursed if we find the monies?
I can speak to that if you wish. So with most federal grants and FEMA in particular, we are always reimbursed. We don't provide that funding ahead of time, but we have to be awarded the grant before we even qualify for that reimbursement. So we have to put our grant provisions forward with our construction phase contractors. The grant provisions list out anything that comes from the federal level of what they need to comply with, which would be above and beyond ours. If we were to work this project tomorrow, one, we're still not going to make the monsoon season, but two, none of it would be qualified for reimbursement because we'd be jumping the gun, if you will, unfortunately.
Very unfortunate. Thank you.
Any other questions on this one before we move forward? So the next one, and these are very actually exciting in my opinion. The Fanning Wash suite of projects. We have 3 distinct projects here to alleviate repetitive flooding on the east side of Flagstaff. So these 3 projects will work in concert, somewhat similar to what we see in Spruce Wash, to alleviate both the FEMA special flood hazard area, what we call the floodplain, as well as what we see in reality in terms of flooding. So that Prius that we saw on the news and made national news in 2021 that was floating down the street, that was actually in the Fanning Wash watershed. So we have one project that's moving forward today, actually the Fanning Wash channel improvement. That is 100% designed. It's been bid out and awarded to Eagle Mountain Construction. They're going to start construction April 1st with completion by July 1st. This will improve this existing channel from near Steves Boulevard to Linda Vista, taking it from a capacity of about 180 cubic feet per second to 514 cubic feet per second. It will also provide a geotechnical report, well, the report's already there, but a geotechnical support for the existing berm so that when FEMA takes a look at this, this will be a fully vetted berm. Right now, when it was built in the 60s, it was before current FEMA standards. Below that, really fun project, Fanning Wash diversion. This is at 60% design. So what this will be doing is we'll be diverting water off at that Linda Vista crossing, and it's going to be taking a new tunnel underneath Linda Vista all the way out to that Casper detention basin. So that really big hole in the ground that you see out near Flag Mall. And it'll allow us to pull off about 400 cubic feet per second out of the existing channel and put it into that hole. And why that's exciting is they'll really reduce flood potential down near Thomas Elementary School, and especially down at Bushmaster and Sadler Homes. So Sadler Homes, we see flood impacts about every 2 or 3 years, and it's because there is a 90-degree, literally a 90-degree bend right at Sadler Homes for the channel, which water does not like doing hard left or right turns, unfortunately. Usually blows out there. So this is a very exciting project. Ivy Koss with Capital as the project manager. We're moving along very well with that, with hopeful construction starting next fiscal year. And then the last one is just upstream, Fanning Wash at Steves Boulevard. This will be replacing the culvert, which is undersized. It has a capacity of about 100 CFS. Replace that with a 514 cubic feet per second capacity, so that we would match the channel that we're building downstream. We're at 30% design, moving towards 60s there. And this is another one that we're hoping for FEMA HMGP funding. So this one, it's good that it's about 2-3 years out, so we have some time to wait from FEMA for, I believe we put in for 1.5 million for this particular culvert. The great thing about culvert crossings, I had dinner the other day with the X lead for HMGP, they love them. Those are cut and paste. So the Cedar Avenue culvert, that was HMGP funded, and the Spruce Wash, and those are very quick to move through. They're not reviewed as tightly as some of the non-standard projects for HMGP. To give you an idea of where these all are, so again, the one we're going to be working on starting next month is number 2 here. The numbering's a little bit wonky, sorry. Number 3 is the Fanning Wash diversion that will drain into this Casper Basin, and number 1 is that Steve's Boulevard one. The colors you see here, this is the current, I don't want to go too much in the weeds, but this is the current FEMA Special Flood Hazard Area map. So everything in blue is your 100-year floodplain, so you can see the channel there. And then everything in orange is your 500-year. So this would completely mitigate the 500-year. And again, not to get in the weeds too much, but it's actually going to mitigate the real 100-year because what we're seeing is the flows off this radio fire from 1977 are about 3 times higher, the real flows, than what FEMA has mapped. So we're actually we're mitigating flood issues that aren't shown on the FEMA map, including the area right here where the Prius went down the street. So it will definitely have much needed benefits, not just for flood insurance for these communities, for the community, but also in terms of real flood impacts. I think I walked through a lot of these already. Spot improvements, so yeah, again, this is a relatively small pot of money, but it's a fun one where we get to kind of work on small localized issues as they come up, usually as drainage complaints. We have roughly $350,000 in it each year right now, which is an increase from what it used to be, quite a bit of an increase, which is great because it allows us to actually have some meaningful impacts. For this current fiscal year, this includes, we talked about this last week, Sinclair Washfoot's culvert replacements, as well as a bundle project for replacing scuppers. These are sidewalk scuppers. They tend to be destroyed by snowplows every year. So there's 7 locations where we're going to replace those metal scuppers and allow for better access. Our plan for next year, and again, this is planned, I'll put a big caveat on that. There is a puddle drain near the Phoenix Sunshine Mission, as well as the BNSF maintenance offices that we'd like to get that drained into the future Rio alignment. So we have that out to bid right now with the JOCs. And then there's a larger capital project in the Smoke Rise neighborhood. It's actually scheduled for 2028, but we did see some flooding in July of last year. So we're going to look at providing at least a temporary localized improvement there that will kind of dovetail into that 2028 larger capital project. And I think that's all we have. Oh, for storm. Oh, Rio Flag, don't worry about that. It's a small little project. It's $266 million. Christine's been doing a great job. We have an awesome project team for that. I don't think we need to speak about it today. And if we do, it's probably not the right one. But obviously, that's always on our brains, and we're really looking forward to seeing that kick off. All right.
Hold on, we have a
Ed,
question.
don't leave.
Councilmember
I was
Matthews?
trying to get out of here.
Come on.
Sorry about that.
So, I know that a lot of these projects have always been and will continue to be at least partially reliant on government funding. But how many projects, capital improvement projects, that was on that list when we approved the stormwater rate increase is getting checked off that list through the increase in the rates?
I would say all of these are fast, I shouldn't say fast tracked, they're moving along faster with that 2022 rate increase than would have been possible before. So as you remember, when we did that 2022 rate study and we came up here and presented it, we were really, as a utility, in the red. So the capacity to take on new capital projects was minimal. And I would say, knowing what we know now for the Rio project, I would say that capacity would have been 0 because we would have had to save like crazy. We still are going to have to save like crazy to match the Army Corps. But I would say, for example, spot improvements before 2022, we were running at roughly, and Rick might remember better than me, but about 100,000 to 150,000. I think we were actually at 75,000 for a number of years. We wouldn't have been able to do, well, any of those, anything that's up on that board for 75,000. Maybe one of those for 150,000. So having a 350, we can actually provide some some improvements. And what I don't have on this list is last year's, and we actually did a handful of really impactful both culvert and catch basin replacements that there's no way we've been able to do that without a rate increase. Fanning Wash Channel improvements, exactly the same issue. So if we're looking at this, the one we're doing in April, maybe we could have gotten away with that. It's about $430,000 for the construction phase, another roughly $100,000 for the design. The reason why the design's so much is because it is a FEMA recognized channel, so we do have to make sure that we are going to be compliant when we come out of this, that we're making it better, at least on the federal level. That would have been tough. 430 plus 100 in design, 500,000. That would have been very tough to have done prior to the rate increase. That Fanning diversion would not have happened. We just don't have the money for that. That's going to be roughly 6 to 7 million. That would be on the deferred list forever. Number one is partially, hopefully, HMGP funded, but again, that's going to be probably 75-25 match. That 25 match would have been the whole year for the projects. And I can kind of walk through all the rest of these too. I mean, Mead Lane, same issue. Santa Fe drainage, yeah, we would have done it. So without the that rate increase, one of our engineers always kind of laughed. He's like, I would have voted to been the capital improvements guy for stormwater because it's really easy. You would sit there and you just save money for 4 years and you do one project. So you don't have to work every 4 years. So we're moving along a lot better here. We're definitely keeping track of it, very cognizant of the cost to the ratepayers. So we are not spending money on frivolous projects. These are all core projects. And we are definitely keeping an eye to the future of, what's that look like? How do we keep the rate steady? Or how do we keep it so we do not have to have a rate shock anytime in the future?
I really appreciate that, and it was a tough discussion, right? So it's really good to hear that we are getting results from that rate increase. I hear it on the street all the time, knocking on doors. People complain about their water and stormwater rates increase, so it's really great to see what we've got in return for it. So thank you so much for that, and it makes me feel good to know that we made a good decision and we're getting some really good projects done, so thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ed, I just had a really brief comment on the Rio de Flag slide, and it really just pertains to consideration that Councilmember Matthews, Mayor, and I, upcoming lobbying trip to DC in the next couple of weeks. Just wanted to let staff know that I'll be reaching out to y'all for personal meetings with those involved in the Rio de Flag floodplain project to get a sense of what your expectations as staff members are for our elected officials in DC pertaining to favorable outcomes, questions, and concerns that you have as folks that are, knee-deep in the trenches in this partnership with the federal government, and some aspects that I may not already be privy to because of not meeting with staff for these particular reasons before. Just giving you all a heads up on that. Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
And Councilmember Garcia, just to jump in, we will actually be preparing a prep meeting for the mayor and the 2 council members who will be going to DC with the staff to prepare for that trip. So nothing you need to do. We're working on that, and we have everybody's schedules, and we'll get that set up.
Excellentro.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just real quick, thank you for the update. I'm hoping that when we get funding that we're waiting on, can you make sure that council knows? I'm thinking of the Mead Lane project in particular, but anything else. Because we do get asked a lot to Councilmember Matthews, and it would be good to just be able to update the community as you know more.
I think we will all be very excited when that grant comes through. We've been waiting on it for quite some time, and it's definitely a project we have high on our minds.
All right, thank you, Ed.
Hey, and to follow up on your question, Vice Mayor, Shannon Anderson and I met this morning about getting a meet in the streets together and getting a email list together for that Mead Lane project. So I'll be working with Ed on that in the very near future. All right. So actually ended up with 2 slides in there that were doubled. So that was our presentation on the water capital. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. Like I said, I really appreciate your approval of the rate increase. Many of these projects would not be moving. Like Justin said, the Lake Mary Sed Basins has been on the books. It was underfunded back in 2019, 2020. We're able to get that completed. The raw water pipeline was kind of a pipe dream at that point, to have a play on words there. I don't know what else I have to finish it up with, so other than just thank you.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you, staff. I especially appreciated the photos and the details of some of the smaller projects because I wasn't aware of all of the finer details. I've just heard the names of the projects said, so I really appreciate this update. And council, any final thoughts or questions? Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, and thank you, Lee. I just wanted to kind of throw this plug in there. I often do when it comes to the water department and some of the flood mitigation projects on the east side of town. We often kind of sometimes cast shade on the speed of government because of all the red tape you got to go through and you know, the different processes that happen. But thanks to yourself and your predecessors and the team here at Team Flagstaff, those projects went rather swimmingly and got caught up to speed, and we're in a place now to where we're more safe than we've ever been. And along that route, it was my observation that, you know, we did as much as we can to make it as safe as we could, as quickly as we could, and then, you know, spread that out as we further downstream into what is more important, you know, and set our priorities for that. So as a council member, I really do appreciate the thoughtfulness that the team has worked for yourself and those before you in the manager's department as well. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I stand on shoulders, great shoulders, so thank you.
All right, we are moving to public safety ballot measure update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Shannon Anderson, your Assistant City Manager. I am presenting this information today, but I think it's important to note you have an incredible team of city staff that is working on this. Not only all of our public safety working groups, but your finance and budget experts as well. So just want to give that entire team a big shout out because I know it's taken a lot of time and dedication to pulling this information together and communicating with the committee. So we're going to start with a little bit of background. I think it's always important to tell our story, where we've been and how we got to where we are today. And that's what this slide attempts to do. If we look all the way back to January 2025 during our budget retreat, staff heard from council things that you wanted to focus on was core services, public safety, and fire resources. That seems like a long time ago, but these efforts take quite a bit of time to build the information and to have the communication and build documents to be sharing with folks. And so January of 2025 is when we started this journey. It continued in our April 2025 budget retreat where we talked about public safety needs along with a couple of other initiatives such as the downtown and our ICCC. Council then supported a public safety ballot measure for us to explore this ballot measure as well as begin our citizen committee, and this was in September of 25. We then went to work as far as inviting members to come and participate in the Citizen Committee. And we began those meetings in November of 2025 and have continued on an almost weekly basis since then. And the goal is to educate, so we've provided a lot of financial information as well as information about our public safety services. So I think it's important to note that the information I'm going to share with you today is summary. It's highlights. I've tried to take months and months of information and put it together so that you have the benefit of having the same information, but it's not going to be to the exact same level of detail. We just don't have that amount of time during this presentation. So I share with you the Connect Flagstaff site, because that's where all of the detailed presentations as well as the recordings from these meetings are housed. Also questions that the committee has had. We actually have a section on that site that has Q&A. So if there was a question they had, there's documents as well as the responses there to be looked at as well. So again, in telling our story, you'll recognize this particular slide. This is what we presented in April of 2025. You'll see emphasis on staffing, supplies, equipment, technology, and facilities. And this is where we started to build what are the needs and then assigning costs with those needs. We also talked about some of the other municipal organizations within the state that had implemented tax increases to help in public safety. These increases varied, at least for these four that we're diving a little bit deeper into, from 0.25% to 0.95%. The next few slides are going to give you some details on how these tax increases actually helped these communities meet their public safety goals and objectives. So we're going to start with Glendale. Glendale actually increased their tax by 0.70%. And with this money, they were able to hire personnel and enhance their public safety operations. We'll transition to Mesa, Arizona. Mesa increased their tax by 0.25%, which helped them build new fire stations, expand a real crime center, and implement two-person fire department teams. These individuals addressed lower-level 911 calls, so wound care, as well as medication administration and other things that fire departments are now helping with, but it doesn't necessarily take a big engine. I'm going to go one more down. I'm going to start with Phoenix, because I like to go in the order in which we listed them on the original slide. In Phoenix, Arizona, they increased by 0.50%. And this assisted their budget shortfall as well as an investment in public safety. Their additional investment in public safety brought reductions in crime in certain areas of their community. It increased the community's safety perception, and it provided more technology tools which allowed them to increase their ability to solve crime. We'd like to share a short news story about what they anticipated the impacts of their public safety tax would bring with the additional investment. So hopefully this will work. It worked on my computer. Let's see if it works on this one.
I think taxes are something that makes all of us panic, whether or not you want to admit it. Being able to pass my taxes to a TurboTax X.
Well, the city of Phoenix is increasing its sales tax by 0.5% to help not only balance its budget, but give the Phoenix Fire Department resources that it desperately needs.
Yeah, that's something that public safety officials have said they really needed in the city. We've got 12 News journalist Troy Lynch following this story for us. He's live in studio this morning. And Troy, you spoke with Phoenix fire officials who feel like this is a big win for them.
Yeah, I spoke with them before and after, and just seeing the relief after this vote actually got approved to increase the sales tax. They just say this is a huge step in the right direction after Phoenix City Council voted to increase that sales tax 8-1. Now, if the sales tax didn't increase, Phoenix's general fund budget was looking at around $39 million in a loss just next year, and public safety is 64% of that general fund budget. Now, Phoenix Fire Department Union President Brian Willingham says the department is behind 15 to 20 years when it comes to resources. But because of the sales tax increase, the Phoenix Fire Department would get about $25 million a year for staffing, which could let them hire about sworn in 134 firefighters. But they're also using some of the excise tax to put in 2 more multi-company stations and adding about 300 total more firefighters in the next few years. Willingham also said this tax increase, it's not going to perfectly solve their response time problems. But right now, they're averaging about 8 minutes, which is well above the national standard of 5 minutes and 20 seconds. However, in the city council meeting, Phoenix fire officials say when they do get these additional resources, it will drop the response times down to around 4 minutes and 43 seconds.
The next 3 years will have sustainability with our existing model, so we can't go backwards with that. And this provides the additional funding for the extra 300 plus bodies and those additional resources to staff the new stations that were approved for the bonds, as well as the other stations that are going to be allocated through the budget that Jeff Barton and Amber and those folks in Budget and Resource were able to work towards.
So Brian mentioned Jeff Barton. That's him right there. He's the Phoenix City manager. And he said in Tuesday's meeting that balancing the city budget became more difficult because of the state's actions over the past year and a half. That includes getting rid of the residential tax and then also making the state income tax flat. And now we've been covering this for weeks now, and Brian also mentioned that with this additional funding, he just is so happy that the city and also community came together. They saw a need and they were able to find some sort of resolution. So it's just good, and they're very optimistic about the future. But we're live here in the studio. Troy Lynch, 12 News, today in AZ.
Well, the city of Phoenix is increasing its sales tax by 0.5%.
Sorry, I didn't mean to restart that. We will go back to this slide. So again, we chose this particular news story because it's very similar to some of the points that are resonating here in our community. They talk about backlog. They talk about the lack of resources to be able to afford the things that are needed, and also the impacts that are happening at the state level. Those are all things that impact the city, not necessarily the residential tax, but the flat tax portion for sure. So that's why we wanted to take a few moments and share that with you. And then just one more that I skipped by is Prescott. Prescott voters actually included a 0.95% increase in their sales tax, and this funded new fire stations, modernized police facilities, and improved staffing levels to enhance emergency response capabilities. So again, another similarity that we're seeing between Phoenix and Prescott is having that additional capacity for response. So to tell you a little bit more about our citizen committee, again, following that September decision by council to move forward with considering a public safety ballot measure, we invited members to join the citizen committee and began sharing all of the details that staff had been pulling together about their service delivery, changes they had experienced in the community, and the needs identified to meet today's demands. This information was presented from November through February. The last presentation was a financial discussion. In this discussion, we outlined general fund revenues, budget expenditures, staffing, one-time and ongoing resources, and the 10-year costs for the needs they'd heard about from each presentation. Here are 2 slides that the city staff presented to create an understanding of the resources from the general fund that's dedicated towards public safety today. The first is looking at the overall general fund budget expenditures. The chart demonstrates the city dedicates about $54 million towards police and fire, or 46% of the general fund resources. There are some additional funding not included in this 46%, such as the $8 million that's paid for pension fund debt, $436,000 budget for emergency management, $16 million for the airport, and $4 million for wildland fire management. So overall, the city expends $83 million per year in an investment in public safety operations. Public safety staffing in police, fire, aircraft rescue and firefighting, and emergency management accounts for 311 of the 981 FTEs that you see on this slide. It's 32% of the general fund. Many on the committee and in the community have asked, with this investment, how did we get here? So as city staff, we've been talking about this question, trying to look at the years and identify what's impacted the organization's ability to invest further in public safety services. And here's what we've outlined. Operating costs are outpacing our revenue growth. And we have ongoing increases in personnel costs, and a big piece of this is the implementation of compensation and benefits to help us retain and attract quality staff. We also have aging infrastructure, which costs us more to maintain. We've been investing in technology because we realize it makes us more efficient in the work that we're doing. It also allows us to be able to create more transparency and reporting to respond to the community. Capital costs have also grown significantly following the pandemic. Some of our items have gone up 60%, which impacts our ability to be able to afford them. And then lastly, the changes at the state and federal level. Some of those changes are the flat state tax rate, which was referenced in that Phoenix video. Recently, the Santan annexation that we've talked about in our budget discussions, the federal budget bill, and lastly, tax conformity. This slide is a good depiction explaining the amount of time that it took the city to begin to fulfill the needs that existed back in 2008. That's your first bar, is the 2008-2009, where we were prior to the recession. The Great Recession impacted the city's financial means, but did not experience a true decline in community expectations for service delivered. This means all existing capacity was spent trying to grow back losses of personnel and contracts and commodities necessary to do that work, which means there's not enough additional capacity to address the growth that was occurring at the same time. The analysis of personnel needs for public safety services alone amounts to an additional $21 million per year in need. These needs in public safety also exist in other core services within the organization and also cannot be funded within our existing revenues. So most of the public safety services mention growth impact in their service delivery as they presented to the committee. So we pulled together on this slide a few metrics that outline the growth we've experienced within Flagstaff, from the changes that we see in the size of our community, to the number of visitors we see at our local university, as well as the number of visitors we see, and then those that are living at our university, the NAU on-campus students. We've also included the growth experienced within the general fund revenue. So you'll see that that goes from $49 million to $88 million between the years of 2008, so pre-recession, to 2024, 2025. This shows that revenue grows about 5% a year, or $2.4 million. On the flip side, expenditures, that $50 million to $85 million over the same time frame, shows again growth of just over 4%, or $2.2 million per year. The continual growth between 2008 through today has led to the needs we began to communicate during the April 2025 Council Budget Retreat. City staff continued to work with the city's finance and budget team to refine the 10-year cost of those identified needs. They also worked together to smooth out those needs over the 10 years, which reduced the 10-year total of $511 million to $407 million. Again, over a 10-year period. The needs have been prioritized by the public safety services teams into 5 tiers. I will share a summary of the needs that have been presented to the committee over the past few months, next, along with the experiences within the service areas that has led to the identified needs. We're going to start with emergency management. Emergency management is in place to help Flagstaff mitigate or proactively plan for risk. We know that this can be severe for our community, especially with wildfire and post-wildfire flooding. The presentation before us today has a couple of great examples of what we need to do for a long-term mitigation towards that post-wildfire flooding. But we also can have severe winter storms. We have critical transportation corridors with our rail, our highway, and our airport. Special events, we've talked about how the pine cone drop went from 15,000 people to 31,000 people this year. Significant increases, which provides for our seasonal tourism. A growing population that has an urban wildland interface. Our public health and supply chain distributions that can happen with things like a pandemic. And then lastly, our increasing reliance on technology and making sure that we have cyber systems in place. So when emergency management looks at all of the components that they need to be ready to mitigate and to plan for, they've identified the following needs. Personnel, 3 FTEs total, as well as equipment and infrastructure, technology and systems that would allow them to forecast and also improve their community notifications, emergency plans that include things like preparedness and evacuation, citywide training and exercises for the entire region so that we're practicing with our partners. Oftentimes, these events are of such large scale, we're not doing it on our own. We have to rely on those within our community that we work with on a regular basis. And then lastly, that community education on what they can do to be prepared for an emergency event and the resources that are available to them. So funding these needs actually impacts the community in these following ways. We have a faster, more coordinated emergency response. We're able to provide more reliable and clear public information and alerts. We are better prepared across our entire organization and with our partners. We are able to reduce our long-term recovery costs after a disaster. We have stronger support for our businesses and our residents. And again, the goal in the end is to have a safer, more resilient Flagstaff. Moving into our fire department, talking through some of the things that they've seen change over, again, that time from about 2008 to today. We've talked about the growth in our community and visitor, also in the community size. But what's unique with the fire department is where their stations are and how those respond to emergencies throughout our community. We also have been discussing the inability of line staff to manage programs because of the large call volume that they're responding to on a regular basis. The frequency and the intensity of our wildland fires, and keeping in mind that every single firefighter is one of our wildfire firefighters. So they're taking care of whether it's the medical call or whether it's a wildland fire that breaks out near Little America. They're the same folks that are responding to both. National standards have continued to evolve for staffing and response times. We've seen a very significant increase in our mid-rise facilities. So the number of buildings that are 2 stories or more went from 316 to 665. It takes a different kind of response. Call volume has increased from 9,984 in 2008 to 18,051 in 2024. Our staff increases have been from 28 firefighters per shift to 30 per shift. We've seen a decrease in the number of applicants applying for the fire service. We've implemented a care unit over that time frame. We've implemented a water resource infrastructure protection fee to help have an ongoing funding source for our wildland fire management program. We've increased our home assessments, working with homeowners to help make sure that they're safe, their area is safe, and that it's creating more safe neighborhoods from wildland fire. We have seen a decline in public education and community presence, along with business inspections, Because again, if you only have a certain number of staff, you have to do those things that are the highest priority. So not that these aren't important, but you have to pick those most important tasks to dedicate your time. So when we look at the fire department needs, you'll see the first 4 lines are staff. So 75, we call that operational and wildland staff because again, they're going to respond to the medical call as well as a wildland fire. We have 1 position in our wildland staff crew that's currently grant funded, and so we would be looking to bring that on to the city's payroll so that it can be ongoing funded. 11 support staff, and then 4 in community risk reduction staff. Just to visit for a moment what community risk reduction staff is that's our fire inspection group, as well as those that manage and oversee that wildland fire management group. So then we go into some of our facility needs. We've talked about Station 7 that will be placed out at the J.W. Powell corridor, an administrative facility, a training tower, a wildland fire management facility, which we've received $4 million from the state, and we need some money to finish out the construction of that project and also provide the equipment and supplies necessary. Station maintenance, station equipment and supplies, as well as cardiac monitor replacement. Those are some of the things that we need for our ongoing day-to-day work. The home hardening as well as hazardous fuel reduction are specific to our wildland fire management team. Academy classroom and facilities, professional development, new staff vehicles and equipment, cancer screening, turnout replacement, radio replacement, digital dispatching, and heart saver tones. Those are all the things that we need to bring in staff to train them and to make sure that they have the tools and supplies they need to do their job. So how funding these needs impacts the community from a fire perspective is it assists in addressing the insurance premium. It's probably not going to solve the whole thing, but it's hopefully going to help. We know our community members are seeing double or triple dollar increases in the cost of their premium. Some are even experiencing an insurance company dropping coverage altogether. We also believe there's less severe wildfire, and we have demonstrated proof that when you have a wildfire in a treated or an engineered areas, it's much less significant than a non-treated area. Staffing to address Flagstaff evolving risk and demands for firefighter safety, reducing the number of units needed to respond because we'll have the appropriate amount of firefighters on that unit to be able to send just one. Sustain and improve response times, to have adequate resources to respond to large-scale or multiple incidents, the ability to maintain trained personnel, to have the facilities for those people and the apparatus they need to do the work, and then again, support for those fire station operations. So moving into our airport, some of the things that they've seen change over this time frame is larger aircraft utilizing our airport, which increases the level of risk. We are now required to meet Index B of Federal Aviation Administrative ARF Index instead of Index A, which means more people. There's been a 22% increase in annual enplanements. I don't know about you, but when I hear the word enplanements, I wasn't exactly sure what that was, so I wanted to define it for all of us, which is the passengers boarding flights out of our airport. This number is since 2018. We are investing time and resources into securing a second airline. This airport continues to be challenged with being self-sustaining. We've increased the number and complexity of federally mandated programs to respond to things that are changing at that government level. We've reduced grant funding support because there are less available. We've expanded parking and developed paid parking in order to help create, again, that self-sustaining airport. We've altered terminal concessions for the same reason. We do have limited security coverage that is available after the last daily departure. They have been able to move to 24-hour day aircraft rescue and firefighting. And the last piece really talks about The vacancy rate, they continue to see turnover here at the airport, which means they're constantly hiring. And they too are experiencing a shortage of qualified applicants. So when we talk about the needs at the airport, 3 ARF personnel, and for those who might be less familiar with what ARF means, it's Aircraft Rescue Firefighting. That's what that stands for. 2 security personnel, which these individuals are provided as a police aid out of our police department, but they provide that security to meet the requirements at the airport. Equipment and supplies. And then the last component is the thought of combining our airport rescue firefighting with Flagstaff Fire. And so it would mean that there would be a fire department full of staff located on the airport that would take care of that ARF responsibility. So again, looking at how these funding these needs impacts the community, it allows us to retain air service, which brings $128.5 million economic impact to our community. It creates 971 jobs, and it generates $7.6 million in local and state tax revenue. So the loss of those components, if we were unsuccessful in maintaining an airport, are significant to our community. This information comes from the 2021 ADOT Aeronautics Arizona Aviation Economic Impact Study. I have a link if folks have questions on it. I'd be happy to share it as the airport has shared it with me. The funding also allows us to have dedicated focus on public safety at the airport, to maintain and improve our emergency response. They respond if there's an aircraft that is having an emergency landing. They respond if there's an aircraft that has a fire, if they flip over. All of those things this team is responding to. It also would allow them to increase employer retention, and then last, provide that security presence whenever the terminal is open to the public. So our last group that we're going to talk about today is the police department. And I realize this is a lot of information, so I appreciate you sticking with me. So what the police department has seen change over time is the expansion of evidence with increased technology. And so what that means is as our technology evolves, as we get new cell phones, as we get additional technology as individuals, that all then needs to become evidence as somebody's investigating a crime. And so they're needing specialized software and additional tools in order to do that criminal investigation work, in order to extract data or other things that they might need in solving that case. They also have aging systems and integration challenges, what makes it difficult to be able to report out when the community is looking for information about crime statistics or things that might be happening in a certain area of our town. A lot of that work is manual because of these integration challenges. There are growing community demands. They have limited space for the growth that they need and the training space for those officers. There is increasing transparency expectations, as well as a high volume of animal-related calls. We've increased our size of community and the number of visitors, as we've attested to already today. And we continue to have a need for scenario-based training for our officers so that they're able to be ready to address those incidents that might not happen on a regular basis, but are of significant involvement. And this takes space to be able to do some of that scenario-based training. Our police officers over this time has increased from 107 in 2006 to 119 in 2026, and our dispatchers over that same time have moved from 29 to 30. So when we look at our police department needs, again, you'll see the first 3 are staff. Professional staff, I want to talk a little bit about what that is, because that's a question that we've received. This includes positions in evidence, in records, in animal control, police aides. So they are non-patrol related positions. They are looking for police vehicles, an incident command vehicle, looking at some building or facility improvements with the LEAF expansion, evidence warehouse expansion, also looking for large vehicle storage, so those pieces of equipment that we spend large dollars on, whether they come through a grant or city funding, we want to protect them so they last longer. Also, again, a substation out at the J.W. Powell corridor, an integrated regional operations center to help in indicating and finding crime, patrol and investigative equipment, software, and lastly, radio replacement. So I want to talk a little bit about financially addressing the needs and what we've been doing as a staff over time to try and continue to increase what we provide from a public safety perspective. We've used a variety of financial tools, such as one-time capacity within our general fund, the refinancing of the pension liability. We apply for grant opportunities every chance we get, whether it helps us with personnel costs or one-time capital investments. And we work regularly with our state and federal partners to lobby for available funding. And we're also looking for additional revenue sources that the council will hear more about as we look forward to the April retreat. So the committee's been wrestling with the thought of increasing costs to address these needs and maintaining affordable living in Flagstaff. Some have expressed concern over the increases that have already taken place with the passing of the 2022 bond, the stormwater fees, and the water, reclaimed water, and wastewater rates. But we've demonstrated today, just with stormwater, water, reclaimed, and wastewater, those needs and the capital investment that are helping our infrastructure in that way. This is not much different, but the fact of the matter is our community feels that. And this committee is really trying to make sure that they're balancing, trying to maintain as much of that affordability as possible, and finding the different types of revenue sources that are available that could minimize the cost to the resident. Some of those public safety funding considerations are one-time, and some of those are ongoing. One-time resources through a GEO bond and development impact fees can pay for capital expenses like a building or a vehicle. Ongoing resources such as the Water Resource Infrastructure Protection Fee and a sales tax could pay for personnel, operations, and maintenance. They're then matching those revenue sources and what's available to the highest priorities identified in the tier tool. I provided a copy of Tier 1 on this particular slide, and I wanted to talk through how we're utilizing this particular tool. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, our public safety services have gone through and prioritized all of their needs, and there's 5 tiers, so this is the highest priority. And how you read this particular document is you see in the green bar above that there's almost $45 million total. That is a 10-year total. And the reason it's important to look at it over 10 years is because there can be escalating costs. You have inflation that you're addressing as well as additional costs of personnel. You don't pay the same thing for a person year 1 as you do year 10. And so all of those costs have been built into these 10-year totals. But when you average that over the 10 years, it's about $14 million per year. So that's all of the items here in Tier 1. Then when you go down to the specific projects, so for instance, emergency management current operations, this includes some personnel and some contracts and commodities. So the first set of numbers, the $3.2 million, is the 10-year total, and then the $326,000 is a per year average. When you look at then the description next to that, a P means personnel. So almost 1.3 million of that 3.2 is for people, and contracts and commodities that the people will need to do the work is $413,000. I'm going to go down to one more example so I can show you where capital comes into this description. So you'll see the next one, emergency management new positions. The 10-year total, $1.5 million. That breaks down to about $1.4 million for personnel, $78,000 for contracts commodities, and then this CA that you see, that's capital, so $80,000, and that capital expense is a vehicle. So that's how you read these numbers. And keep in mind the descriptions of the personnel, the contracts, commodities, and the capital. Those are all 10-year totals. So they're going to tie to the first number that you see in each particular line. This was how we organized the information, because if you think about having all of the details that build up to these totals, this is a workbook that includes about 20 to 25 different sheets that link together in order to be able to tell these stories. But having that information allows us to have a tool so that as the committee decides, you know what happens if we reduce airport police aids by one person? I'm not going to say that we're doing that, but I'm just using it as an example. We're able to go into that tool, manipulate the data, and come up with not only a new total for that line, but a total for this tier as well. So it just allows us to have an interactive dialogue with the committee as they start to winnow down the list based on not only the priorities, based on what they've heard, but what they get from the community survey and they're hearing from the community themselves. Which leads me into our next steps, which is my last slide, so then we'll be ready for any questions or comments that you might have as council. We have paused these citizen committee meetings because we're in the process of creating a survey and launching that. They've decided they don't want to meet until after we have survey results come back, so that will be our next meeting with them, is to discuss those survey outcomes. So they will be able to then talk about how does that either match or differ the things that they've been talking about as a committee. The public is also able to attend these meetings, so this is a reminder. The public is able to attend. If you can't attend, you again can access that Connect Flagstaff site to stay up with the same materials that we're sharing. There will be an opportunity for community to share comments with the Citizen Committee here in the near future. And the committee then has these survey results, that public comment, as well as their own discussions to help them create their recommendation that will come back to City Council in June. City Council then determines if there will be a public safety ballot measure included in the November 2026 ballot and what the parameters of that measure might be. So that's what we have as our next steps, but we wanted to take some time to really provide you the details that we've been talking about, not only as city staff, but also sharing with this committee. Again, I realize it was a lot of information and I appreciate you sticking with me. What questions might you have that we can answer for you?
I think we have a couple. So, Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shannon. That's really great information. I have been following the public committee, Safety Tax Committee. Just as an FYI to IT, every time someone turns their head to speak to their neighbor, you can't hear the audio. So I miss about half of what's on the audio, but I will go back and read the transcripts. This process has not only been just highly informative, but upsetting. And I have to say that I felt really that I've let the community down because I had no idea to the degree that we have not been addressing the ask every year with fire and PD. We're a community surrounded by fire kindling. If we don't have the appropriate assets and personnel, none of the other stuff we do matters. We're all gonna go up in smoke. We're in the middle of the 17 and the 40. If we do not equip our police department with the tools that they need and the resources and the staffing, you know, we're in real trouble. What I did see, and I didn't watch every meeting, but I thought, wow, this would have been so great for us as council to go through. I have a finance degree and background. I've consulted businesses. I've been frustrated, and this is past tense. I'm very I'm very encouraged by our city manager and the changes that she's making, and I look forward to those changes. I've been frustrated with our budget process since I've been on council, and as evidence, last year, I asked for us to have a special meeting for housing and sustainability because those were our two declared crises. And I think that myself, along with a lot of the community, just always assumed that all these other things that we talk about to fund were the other stuff that we want to fund because we are always taking care of core services. And when I saw some of the asks, especially in fire a couple of years ago, that asked for what, I may be wrong a little bit on the number 13 FTE, and they got 0, I almost fell out of my chair. And I've made probably, well, they have been negative comments about the magic budget team that, you know, we go to these budget retreats and we hear what was already decided. And not to say we're all equipped to make budget decisions, but it would have been helpful to really realize what we are passing up or not funding. And that's just a side commentary that I just wanted to put out there because I feel really bad that I didn't realize how bad I missed the boat on what we weren't doing for our public safety. I'm conflicted with this because absolutely we need these things that public safety is asking for. I'm conflicted because I also know the strain on our community with all the rate increases and taxes. We're, I think, the 7th highest combined sales tax city out of the 90 cities in Arizona. And you mentioned Prescott is raising their sales tax in the city of Phoenix, and they're about 7 or 8, you know, ranked below us. So maybe that'll just bring them up to close to what we are. So I'm sensitive to that because I hear it all the time about the cost, the tax, and you know, the water rate and the stormwater rate and this rate and that rate. But at the same time, here we are once again to a breaking point. And I know that we can't keep up. A lot of things happen that our growth and our sales tax revenue and stuff has not kept up with the need and the cost and stuff. But I really also feel that we need to take a hard revisit to our budget. And I know that we can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, and the money's not there in our budget to do all this. But I think we owe it to our community to also say that we're also looking at what we've prioritized in the past and maybe taking a different approach to those things. I'll look forward to what the community surveys say. This is going to be hard, I think, for our community, but so necessary. So it's really hard to say, yeah, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to raise taxes. Maybe secondary property tax won't impact anyone. And we've got about $40 million there that I think we can leverage on. But this ongoing need, we really need to make sure that when we're out in the community that we can say, yes, we've really reanalyzed everything, and this is what we can do within our budget and general funds, and these are the additional things that we have to find money for, whether it's through a primary tax, a sales tax, or other taxes and stuff. So it's been a real struggle listening to this and hearing the community in those meetings saying, what the heck has the city council been doing? Like, how come they've let it go this long? And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, right? So, you know, I hate that once again, it seems like this council and the one just prior when we had to do the stormwater and the water rate, you know, we're faced with making changes that just have been building since 2009, you mentioned. I know that part of where maybe it started was city management back then did recession cuts, 20% across the board on all departments, and maybe a better plan in hindsight would have been, but not public safety. And it just snowballed after that. So this is going to be, I hope that my colleagues, watch those other meetings. It's very educational. Man, I learned so much, and I have a master's degree in this stuff, and I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know we did this or we didn't do that. So I encourage everybody, because we're going to have a tough decision in June. And of course, it's up to the voters at the end, but I want to make sure that we've really understood it correctly. And I'm not venting to you, Shannon, you've done a fantastic job, and I really appreciate already, before this came up, what our city manager is doing. It's just frustrating where we are today and where the need is, because my gosh, we didn't have a very wet winter, and we need all the fire resources we can get, right? We don't want to say, well, maybe in a couple of years we can afford another fire truck or something. We need this stuff now, and it's our responsibility, first and foremost, as council and as a city, to take care of these core services. So I guess I'm happy and sad that we're having to tackle this monumental task and ask, but I hope we fix it, and whatever that solution is, and come up with something and heal, our public safety and get them up to where they need to be. So thank you.
Yeah, if I could just provide one comment to maybe hopefully take that strain off of council. The reason I started this presentation with what we talked about in April is because we didn't necessarily know the details of all of these needs. The fire department, as you've indicated, has been asking for a number of positions that we haven't been able to fund, but that isn't the case with some of these other groups. And so I want to be clear that we had an idea of what we needed. Given that we were able to move forward with a potential ballot measure, we really spent a lot of time doing analysis that was able to get to this level of detail. So I don't want to give you or the community an impression that we've been asking for $407 million over a 10-year period for years, and you just haven't given it to us. That's certainly not the intent. A lot of this discovery has happened more recently. One of the things that we talked about with the budget team last year, knowing that this potentially was coming, was doing a staffing study within the police department. So we funded that in order to prepare so we could have these numbers to present to you and to the community. So I wanted to spend just a little bit of time telling a little bit more of that story to help an understanding of how we got here today. You're welcome.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shannon. Just quickly, I wanted to talk about some of the needs that you were addressing under particularly the fire department. I know there was listed in there the desire that this would include cancer screenings, and that's something that I brought up recently in a conversation after having chatted with the fire department about the need for cancer screenings because of some of the things that they are faced with just by responding to any sort of building fire and or structural fire. And I know most of us have probably seen the news just out of Phoenix today of the unfortunate passing of a firefighter in their department due to occupational cancer. So my question is really just wanting to get to the heart of what are we looking to do to address some of those types of needs in the event that this ballot measure did not pass? Are we looking at alternative ways to fund items such as the cancer screening or some of the other items as a alternative planning?
So Councilmember House, the cancer screenings had previously been funded with one-time dollars, and I believe we were scheduling 1/3 of the department. So it took us 3 years to do a screening for all of the staff. I will tell you, during our April budget retreat coming up here in the next month, we are going to present to you an idea of how we think we can move the initial screening as well as the screenings that continue to occur once somebody is diagnosed into an ongoing funding bucket. So we believe that could be a backup for this particular item for if a public safety ballot measure was not to move forward, that we could address at least that item.
Thank you so much. And just in terms of the rest of the measure, because there is so much that's captured in this, and it's all critical and important to our community. Again, just thinking about what pathways we have or what options we have if the measure wasn't to pass with the public. Are there thoughts on what we can do to start building up our resources to meet some of these needs in alternative ways?
I think we've done pieces of that, again, that you'll see in the April budget retreat. But honestly, to be able to come up with the significant, I mean, just the $21 million a year for staffing and ongoing dollars. We typically in our revenue are seeing about $2.4 million growth. So without some type of additional revenue source, I'm not sure how we close that gap. If the ballot measure was not to be successful, city staff are committed to continuing to work through our budget process and trying to look at how we fund each of these items. Even if it's only with a one-time dollar, that's far better than not funding it at all. You'll find that we are a little hesitant to do that with personnel because you don't want to hire someone if you don't know that you're going to have the dollars to pay them again next year. You have to go through a lot, especially for the fire department, to train them with the academy and the equipment that you're purchasing to go along with that new hire. It just wouldn't necessarily be the best investment if you didn't know that you could do that on an ongoing basis. We've also been talking about grants, right? We know that they're not maybe as prevalent as they have been, and even if they do exist, they're not covering the same level. That doesn't mean we're not going to try to attain them, just means we're trying not to count on them. So how we've communicated about that at the committee level is similar to what we talked about with the 2022 bond. If we're able to get a grant, that just gives us more one-time capacity where maybe we can buy something else that was a need that we originally weren't going to be able to get to without the grant. But we're at least making sure that we have a dedicated source for that personnel, because the grant only covers a portion of their salary and it only covers it for about 2 to 3 years, depending on which grant you're talking about. Does that answer your question?
It does, and thank you, and also apologies for asking essentially the same question twice. I think it's a really important thing for the community to have that information as part of not only the consideration of this measure, but also just in terms of what our public safety is facing overall. So I really wanted to just give you the opportunity to speak to that a little bit more, and thank you very much for your very thoughtful response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you so very much, Madam Mayor. So Shannon, thank you for the presentation. Good God, you guys have done so much work as staff on this project, and I'll speak more to that in my comment. But let me just start off with a question. I have so many questions, most of which I'll take off of line because they do dig into the details a little bit more. But I was just noticing that we didn't have a bullet point for PRSP on this, and I was wondering if that's just because it's directly correlated with each staff member, and if the retirement program for public safety would be funded, like with each new staff member, would be funded in the same way through these ballot initiatives, if that's the route that we went.
So public safety, at least the addressing of the unfunded liability, was the $8 million a year that we're paying. That's not included in the numbers that we've presented to you today. So it's on top of, I think it was $116 million that we spend out of the general fund. We also pay for that debt financing to pay back that unfunded liability. Moving forward, when we plan for this staff, it includes all of their benefits, it includes their public safety costs, it includes their future step pay plan increases. So that's why you see that the number gets bigger over that 10-year period of time.
Thank you for that clarification. And then after witnessing the PRSP getting caught up to speed back a few years back, that council went through that process, it makes me really happy that not only have we taken care of that in prior councils, but we're also currently looking to fund that fully through this process. My biggest goal is the longevity of our employees in some of these high sensitive areas where it's difficult to, they have a difficult job just to come to work. So maintaining longevity, I think it really benefits our community as far as that is concerned. So I'm super excited about that. Now, to my comment, I ran my campaign as one of my main bullet points was to see what we could do about public safety and getting them caught up to speed, because I've known of their concerns from the past. And I was very pleasantly surprised and excited to hear that during our budget discussions last year, that each and every one of the council members and mayor also shared that same drive to get this done. And as a consequence, which I'm sure there was much more details that had been done before I got on council looking at this, but as a consequence, we saw that the city manager stepped up to figure out an avenue and a pathway for funding, which that's where we rested on with the Citizens Committee. And I also watched, much like Councilmember Matthews, I'm very interested in the details. So I've been watching these meetings since November, and I too heard those kind of concerns and questions about, what is the city council doing? And in my estimation, what I explained up till then, to this point, is we made our grievance known to the manager. The manager figured out a plan for funding, and then one of the next steps is to have that other touch point of citizen connectivity, and that is the group that is meeting now, and having their discussions. From there, we take it on again when that is done. So I had just a slightly different take in saying that the process that is happening, what city councils did was they came to the budget and said, we want change. And as a consequence, we are now in the process of that change under the right circumstances, with the right committee. And that's, I've said it before and I'll say it again, that's what democracy looks like when it's done right. So I am proud of the committee and all of their questions, learning so much from them. And I think that's what this process brings to a city council is, like I said, it gives us that other touch point for the community to interact. And I'm really content with the amount of work, the amount of questioning that is coming from this committee. Hats off to all of them. For just the intentionality and the learning that they're going through. I'm watching them learn as well through the process of what can and can't be done. And that's it's good for all of the community. And I was so happy that you ended the slideshow by mentioning to the public that this is now the time when you can be involved with this process as well through these commission meetings as a public commenter. And the time is now for the community that is concerned about this to step up and offer their viewpoints. Through this commission, we have learned that a lot of the commissioners have reached out to their own communities, and we've seen that feedback put into play in a way that's super beneficial. You have also highlighted a place that we can go and the citizens can go to catch up to speed on these things. So that way, when we make this decision in the end, we make it together as a community. And I just really want to thank the staff for answering all of those questions, and the committee members for asking all of those questions, and for the community for staying through the process. Manager's office has done a wonderful job setting this up for us. And I think this is what we're supposed to be doing when we're getting these things solved. And I am excited to move this forward to address the concerns that have been ongoing for quite some time. I don't think we were paying the community a disservice by not addressing them before. I think that we were running concurrent with the times, but now we're at a pivotal point where it's the time is right to be moving forward with a funding apparatus that will make us more successful for the future. And with that, I'm done with my comment. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your work, Shannon, and to the team. This was a very enlightening presentation, and I too have been watching the meetings, and I know how much everyone is working to get us to a point where we can at least understand what the needs are. You know, public safety is one of our most fundamental responsibilities, and I think it's easy to forget that, but it truly is like one of the reasons we're sitting up here. So I'm definitely glad we're having this conversation. I think that there's a lot to this, and I want to make sure that as we move along this process that we do make things very clear for the community, and I'm glad that we're doing that tonight. And I think that, you know, I talk to our public safety team sometimes, and I think they're just tired. You know, every year they're fighting for the basic needs to keep going, on top of working a job that takes a lot and is imperative to our community. So I just want to offer that I think we all acknowledge that, and we have a great council up here that hopefully is understanding those needs. I think we are, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. A couple of thoughts. I just want to make sure that as we move along, we're turning over all the rocks. I mean, I know this discussion is very important, but you know, just keeping nimble in what other funding sources there are, because maybe we can, maybe we can't do exactly everything to get it done, but maybe there's some other options out there I want to keep ourselves open to. And thinking on this, you know, I'm not always going to be sitting up here, and neither are all of us, and I want to make sure that in the future we are keeping our eye on our core services and our needs, and making sure that we don't put future councils and city managers and community members in this position. And looking at the tiers, Shannon, just my one question, they're not all or nothing in each tier, correct? So we could intermingle to come up with a good package that addresses needs in all of the tiers as we move along.
Yes, the tiers don't have to be all or nothing. Even when you look at an item, right, the example I used earlier is a police aid. If there's, 10 positions, we could talk about, can we have effectiveness if maybe we can only hire 6 of them? What does that look like? Because again, we are accustomed to living within our revenues and the money that we have available. So I'm confident that if we were able to say, these are the amount of dollars that we think we'll have, the teams can come back and say, this is what we think will be the most impactful package that we can put together for you. If that's how they decide to have that conversation. Sometimes a committee will go through themselves and just make those recommendations. I'm uncertain at this time exactly how this committee will go through that conversation. Right now, it's just been identifying what are some potential sources and the dollar amounts and how far will that get us on the list. That's really to the extent they've had thus far.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to our budget retreat, which is something that I honestly have not, I don't think I've said that before, but I am really looking forward to a different approach, and thank you to our city manager for really listening to council and some of our frustrations and tackling it, and I appreciate it. I know it's not easy, so thank you.
Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much, Shannon, for this presentation, and thank you to everybody who worked with you to bring it forward to council and all the background work that goes along with it. A couple quick questions, some detailed ones here. You mentioned there was a high of 119 police officers as of right now. I'm wondering if that number was higher in the past, or if that max also just happens to be the current high number.
I believe that's the highest number because the 106, I think, was prior to, the 107 was in 2006, so that would have been prior to the recession. So that 119 would be the highest from an FTE perspective.
Great, okay, I was just wondering if it got up to the 130s at some point between those two dates. But it looks like we're sort of at a pinnacle right now.
We are, and I will tell you that as a budget team and city management, they had authorized years ago for them to overhire by 2. I believe we're now overhiring by 4. The reason we do that is because of the amount of time it takes them to get through the background process to try and keep them fully staffed, because we know that's a big benefit to our community.
And naturally, you'll lose some along the way,
Exactly.
no matter how many you are able to recruit into the process before they get through the process. And then you may have touched on this and somehow I just missed it, but maybe you could put a finer point on it. And for the community who hasn't been tuned into these meetings and seeing them, can you expand upon a little detail of who's making up the public committee and who you might be targeting, who's missing from the table as we move forward?
I do have a very comprehensive list that we shared back in September. I can tell you some of the people that are on there regularly, but there are a lot of folks that maybe can't come all the time, and so I'll apologize in advance if I miss some.
Yeah, and I don't need names specifically,
Okay.
but really just, I want to get a sense of, is 90% of the makeup people who are involved with public safety? Are there elements of the community that, you know, that are concerned about police that are also coming to the table in a collaborative manner to try to help solve these problems? So if you can just categorize groups of folks a little bit, that's sufficient for my question.
I mean, I definitely think there are individuals on the committee that have a higher usage of public safety services. Some of them are social service providers. We've got members of NAU, members of Guardian. So yeah, there are definitely partners at the table, but we also try to have a good mix, right? Because sometimes our partners are going to know a lot more about our operations than somebody who might be from a different committee that isn't as familiar with those services. And we wanted to make sure that we had a very dynamic and diverse group. So yes, there's some of it, but I wouldn't say it's anywhere close to 90%.
Just for example, do you know if there's anyone from Keep Flagstaff Together that's been involved with these conversations?
No, I don't believe that we have anyone from that particular group.
Okay, I would lift up that maybe that's one of the blind spots we could work to fill as we move forward. We're going to need a collaboration and a cooperation from almost every element of the community to get this across the finish line to succeed. And so just thinking very creatively and broadly about who we bring to the table and who we start to get invested in this process and for the outcome is just really strategically important. And important to the bottom line of getting to the services that our community is wanting and demanding. So thank you, Shannon. I will kind of move forward with just a couple little comments here. You know, I'm very much behind this effort. I think we've had fits and starts trying to get it going in the past, and there are reasons and contextual landscape problems with why this hasn't gotten off the ground before. And I think we're in a position to have a great deal of success for this, so it's the right time to pounce, and I recognize that, and I'm fully behind it. You know, and I would just dare say that there's reasons for the community at large to really be behind this, and especially if there's, you know, particular issues with the way that public safety is being managed in Flagstaff. I don't have a lot of these concerns, but many in the community express these viewpoints. And I just think that if the Flagstaff community is demanding that their police force become more responsive, more transparent, and more accessible, and be better trained to deal with vulnerable populations, and if the community is demanding less strings attached to government funding and contracts and grants for important police-related operational resources and capital expenses, then support for this bond is something that we should all get behind, full stop. You know, and I don't know that this needs to be hard on our community, as mentioned by Councilmember Matthews. I get where she's coming from. No one likes to raise taxes or do anything along those lines, but you know, our community has proven its appetite for stepping up and putting its money where its mouth is when it comes asking for the city of Flagstaff to do things for it. FWPP, the Flagstaff Watershed Protection Project, is one pertinent example, and there are many others. And then I kind of want to just linger on another point here for a moment. I really don't think we should short shrift the amount of work that has been accomplished by council over the last several years. You know, we're not asking Flagstaff to shoulder the burden of council leadership failures with this bond measure. Let's be very clear. We're asking them to bridge the gap so that we move forward with our feet fully underneath us. And, you know, since I've been on council, we've solved the $100 million pension problem and unfunded liability problem creatively, I might add. We've worked to up pay. We've gotten a second quid. We've worked to get more medics on units as requested. We've worked to alleviate the compression issue and raise retention. And we've started our own academy. And let's not forget the care unit. That is proving to be enormously successful and is doing a great deal of alleviating of pressure from our frontline first responders. And we are excited about that project growing as well as we move forward. I'm really proud of those accomplishments. Even if there is always more need to address more problems and you know, achieve better tightening of gaps between what we have and what we need. We've done so much to right this ship since I came on board in 2018, and we're in a position now to see these things through to the finish line, thanks to all the accomplishments that have been made along the way, and thanks to the hard work of leadership and city management at the direction of council. So I think it's really important that we tell the story that we've been very successful at getting things going and getting momentum behind us over these past few cycles. So that, because the voters want to feel brought in on getting across the finish line of something successful. They want to invest in things that are working and are likely to succeed. And the narrative moving forward for this needs to be, you know, let's finish the job. But we can only get so far on council, and these are the reasons why. And this is going to be a huge help and a huge lift to get us across the finish line.
Appreciate that, Councilmember Aslan.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you for coming back to me, Mayor. I had one more point that I kind of left off the table that I wanted to bring up. And you've mentioned the success of other cities taking on similar voter initiatives and tax hikes that really help their communities. But we didn't mention the city of Tucson where it failed. And I want to make sure that we're being very deliberate with our educational outreach, because people might not understand. They might look at that number of 50 to 60 new police officers and think, oh no, now they're going to be pulling me over for cracked windshields or something. Like micro prioritizing and profiling and things like that. And they might be scared of that, and that might make this fail. When we, in the way I see it is completely for what it is, and that's we're adding some relief to these positions where people aren't required overtime and can have a home life and can sustain balance within their work life and family relationships. I think that that's more aligned with what we're trying to do here. But if without that educational part, there might be some misconceptions on how this money is going to be distributed and what it's going to be used for. And if we can clarify that, I think we'll have a lot more success here, because I would hate to see what happened in Tucson happen here.
Appreciate that. Even though we didn't list it, that is something that we're fully aware of, and watched what they did to educate what they were asking for as well, so that we're cognizant of what could create a potential lack of support. I also wanted to share one story because I think it's a good opportunity based on some of your sharing. And that's, everyone's aware of the recent incident that we had on the west side of town where we had a shooter that was in the community and many of our officers responding. That size of event and the number of personnel that it pulls out of the department because they all wear multiple hats because we are a smaller department, made it to where we needed to rely on NEU, the Sheriff's Office, and other law enforcement agencies to help us run day to day after that because we had so many people involved in that one incident. So I think it's a good example to really share, like, what is the benefit of having additional officers? In that particular case, maybe then we had the officers to do that work, and then we still had the people to run the calls that were also happening at that time, because the world doesn't stop just because we're all over in one area of the community. So thanks for letting me share that story.
I want to echo my gratitude to all of the residents who are serving on the committee and to the staff. I know it took countless hours of work to put together just the stats and the plans for the future. So this has been a tremendous amount of work in addition to everything that you're already doing. So thank you so much. And I think that the city does a pretty good job of balancing all of the needs, and I don't necessarily consider them competing needs, right? There are core services, as far as I'm concerned, are also part of the quality of life. And then we think of things like Parks and Rec as part of the quality of life, but I also consider them part of public safety. I see how all of this works together, and I think we do a pretty good job. Seeing these needs just reinforces the need to keep a close eye as we're moving forward, to try to stay as up to date as we can on everything, which is challenging because budgets are challenging. And one thing, I'll just, to underline what you said, the city is facing more and more pressure because of state and federal government backing off some of the help that we were receiving. We've seen grants be rescinded. We've seen grants become non-existent as priorities shift, and that becomes challenging for us to try to keep maintaining the service level that the residents of Flagstaff deserve when we're finding it harder to find those federal and state partners to help us provide these services. And I appreciated you showing the information about the other cities, because I think it's, as has been said here, I think it's important to remember this isn't just a Flagstaff thing where we're trying to catch up in some areas, but also trying to be very forward-thinking in other areas to make sure that we have the right balance. And I think it's a testament to the dedication of staff and this committee for getting us to this place where we are. And I look forward to hearing what residents say in the survey results and having further discussions about that. I do have, and I don't need to know details at this point, but one point that really stuck out to me was that we're seeing declining rates of applicants for jobs, and yet we have some pretty significant goals for adding new staff. And so I'm sure that there's a plan either in place or in development to overcome those declines that we've seen lately, if we are able, I'll say when we're able to fund all of these positions, correct?
Appreciate that positivity, Mayor. Yes, so the fire department has already instituted a concept called a Green Academy. They've requested that funding, I believe, for the first time this year. What a Green Academy is it's not an individual who has necessarily completed all of their fire science and EMT requirements. They're individuals who are interested and have the capacity to do this kind of work, and we help them obtain not only the educational credentials, but also that on-the-job training that they already receive today in the academy. So we're hoping that by instituting that type of academy, that we will be able to attract a larger number of applicants. You do have a risk that some might not be as successful, but we do believe that this will help us get a larger number of folks being able to apply.
Excellent. I knew there had to be a plan, so thank you. Council, any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, I will just say thank you again to everyone who had a hand in preparing us to be at the place that we are, and I look forward to the next update.
Thanks again.
All right, we are down to item number 9, discussion regarding amendments to the City Council Rules of Procedure.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Stacy Salzberg. I'm your Communication and Civic Engagement Director. I am here tonight to discuss your City Council Rules of Procedure and review some potential amendments. While I intend to review these changes at a higher level, I do have the track changes document available to show that might go into a little more detail if that's something that you all would like or need. The track changes document was also included in your agenda packet, so you should have that available to you as well. All right. So the City Council Rules of Procedure were developed and adopted by Council to provide protocols on how meetings are conducted, how agendas are prepared, along with other operational matters. The Rules of Procedure is a living document that can be reviewed and amended by Council at any time. The Council recently discussed possible edits at your retreat in January. So what is being presented tonight is an outcome of that discussion. So following your direction and input, what you'll see tonight is a result of that. So a quick overview of the proposed changes. We will be going into more detail on the rule changes that you see on the left side of the screen. And I'm going to briefly cover the administrative cleanup items right now, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on them unless, again, you've got questions. They're pretty minor in kind of the collective here, and I think more of our time is going to be spent on the overall rule changes. So throughout this document and the edits that are being made, I am suggesting that we move to more inclusive pronouns, so removing things like he and she, replacing with they and their, and that would happen throughout the entirety of the document. Rule 4.01, related to procedures for the preparation of council agendas, is going to just clarify expectations for agenda distribution. So right now it talks about contacting you on the phone, providing you with a solid paper packet. Those are things that don't happen anymore. So cleaning that up, and also when that distribution would occur. So I think the way that it's set up right now is that those packets must be delivered on the Thursday before. We usually get that stuff out a little bit sooner, so just adjusting that so that it mirrors our current practices. It also provides a little more flexibility as your process changes a bit. That'll allow those packets to be distributed as you would like. Rule 7.03, decorum and order among citizen participants, really is just rearranging the verbiage that's within the existing rules of procedure. It helps kind of improve the flow of that section and provides for some additional clarity. It also will modernize the language that's included in that section. We no longer have a sergeant at arms that is present at our meeting, other than the mayor. So again, cleaning up some of that and making that section reflect our current operations. And then Rule 10, regarding rules governing motions by the council. There, again, are just some really minor clarifications in the language of some of those motions to better reflect our current practices and make things a little bit more easier to understand. So we'll move into the more substantive changes that are being considered. The first is with Rule 3 for council meetings. We are better defining council's summer break. This has always been one of those things that gets a little bit weird, and our procedures actually list out, you're going to meet January, February, March. We got rid of all of that, made it very simple. You go on break after the first meeting in July, you come back for that last week in August. So again, just trying to provide some additional clarity. We're also making some adjustments for the months that have 5 Tuesdays. Quite some time ago, we decided that we weren't going to hold council meetings on that 5th Tuesday. We kind of tested it out, kind of saw what the effects of that were. Council seemed to appreciate that, so we're just codifying that within your rules. We're also going to be removing the review of the draft agenda from the work session. This is something that we discussed at your retreat specifically. As you saw today, you have that portion on your agenda. It's not generating the intent or the questions that I think it was really meant to provide when it was first put into place. It's just kind of turned into a very routine check the box type of thing. So we're going to pull that out of your work session agendas. This is not going to eliminate the distribution of a draft agenda. You will continue to get that draft agenda ahead of time so that you have an opportunity to review and ask questions through the city manager and staff. The other area is clarifying that executive sessions can occur as needed on any Tuesday. And it also will remove the 1 o'clock start time. So again, you're seeing quite consistently, there are some months that we have an executive session every week. They're not occurring on just the work session nights. And so instead of having a very rigid rule that says that they occur on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays, we're really just saying they can happen at any time. They're called in cooperation with the city manager and our city attorney. Again, providing for that flexibility. Sometimes we start at 1, sometimes we start at 2, sometimes we start at 11. So rules 4.02 and 4.03, future agenda item requests. This always seems to be a good topic of conversation when we talk about our rules of procedure. And we did spend quite a bit of time on this at the January retreat and kind of talking about this process and how to perhaps make it a bit more simplified, a bit more streamlined, so that you're getting kind of the information and the presentations that you're looking to get in a more efficient manner. So the changes that are being presented really are going to pull back on the rigidity of the process that exists today and provide greater flexibility. So again, I'm not going to go through the revisions line by line as you see them in the track changes document. I'm going to kind of touch on the higher level components of this. But essentially, all fare items will be submitted directly to the city manager. The city manager will then determine what those next steps are going to be. And that could include a variety of different things. It may be that a meeting is set up with staff, or staff might provide a council communication report that can give the information that you're looking for. She could also, have some time to tell you that staff is already working on this. We're getting really close. We're going to be scheduling it to come back soon. Sit tight and wait, and we'll get to it very, very soon. Or she just might say, yep, this is great. This is something we need to talk about. We're going to stick it on the agenda. And that can just happen under her authority. There is also the ability that if it's something that the city manager thinks might need some council consideration before a larger discussion happens, she can also place it on the agenda as a formal fair item, which would then go through the typical process of looking to council to see if there are 3 in support of having that discussion, and then move forward from there. Again, this provides an opportunity for the city manager to act a bit more quickly in getting responses to your requests and having that information to you. There's also some language that is added to this section to clarify that during the formal fair process, there really should not be any discussions about the item or explanations. It's really only meant to be an indication of support or non-support to place something on a future agenda. That larger discussion would happen at that time, and that's when we would be formally seeking some direction from council or some action. Excuse me, sorry. All right, rule number 5 related to our order of business. These edits include changing public participation to open call to the public. Again, this is something we changed quite some time ago. We're now at a place where we can codify that into your rules. It is also going to remove some of the agenda sections that we no longer use. The city manager update, legislative updates, and again, that review of the draft agenda, if that's something that council is supportive of removing, that also would come off. Additionally, we have changed the informational items and reports to and from council and staff and future agenda item requests heading so that it now will read announcements and updates to and from council and city manager. It is also adding a definition of what is expected during that announcement and updates portion of the agenda. The removal of that requests for future agenda items is a reflection of what we just talked about in the last rule change, is that we're really hoping that that information will go through the city manager who is responsible for setting the agenda and then bringing those forward that way. Our next rule is 6.02 related to the temporary chair. This item and these changes would reflect our current practice of how we select a council member to chair a meeting should the mayor and vice mayor not be available. Right now, it requires me to call a meeting to order, which I think if you know me, I don't want to call meetings to order. But what we've done in the past is we have defaulted to the council member who has received the second highest number of votes at that most recent general candidate election. So it's continuing that structure that we use for the selection of the vice mayor. So again, just codifying our current practice.
Excuse me, Stacy, Councilmember Aslan has a question.
Oh, sure, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to point out a technicality. We can have a meeting as long as there's 4 council members, right?
Yes.
So there could be 3 council members missing, including the council member who received the second highest votes at the most recent general candidate election. So I might just include in there sort of a progression of that. If that person is also absent, the third or whatever,
So on and so forth. Thank you. I think that's a great suggestion. Okay. Moving on to 9.01, non-public hearing discussions. This section is going to add some language to identify which agenda categories will not permit public comment. This doesn't happen frequently, but there's been some conversations about whether or not it's appropriate to have public comment at some sections of our agenda. And what we've identified is that proclamations and recognitions, council liaison reports and the announcements and updates portion of the meeting really should be confined to the council, and we would not permit public comment during those items. So 9.01A is going to be a new section within your rules of procedure. And this section is intended to define what the open call to the public is. It also will codify the 30-minute rule that we've put in place, again, some time ago, that limits that first open call to the public to 30 minutes. And then anything that is remaining after that 30 minutes would be pushed to that second open call that occurs at the end of the meeting. So it puts that language into your rules of procedure. This is very similar to the language that's included on the agenda, so it's mirroring what we're sharing with the public as well. Section 9.02 regarding public hearings. This section, we are proposing to soften the language a bit to provide a bit more flexibility when we've got items that come in that have a very specific public hearing structure. Many of you may be aware there are often times when we have presentations from staff that is followed by presentations from, say, a developer. There's a rebuttal period. Those are limited to 5 minutes. And the way that the rules are written right now, there's a lot of shalls and musts. And we're proposing to move to a more may situation. We're already not always following that very formal and rigid structure. So we don't want to take that away necessarily. I think by adding those mays versus shalls provides that flexibility that if you want to kind of have a more fluid process, that's permitted. But if the situation is, requires something a bit more structured, that also exists and is able to be used. All right, and Rule 11.07, this has to do with your lobbying meetings and trips. This was another area that we spent quite some time discussing at your retreat. At that time, we talked about the fact that it's not uncommon for council members or the mayor to be approached by one of our representatives with a request to meet individually. This is something that comes to you personally. It doesn't necessarily come through a formal request to the office. And so we're wanting to, again, recognize when those things happen and to provide some guidance to how those meetings could better be transparent or shared with each other, right? We see, and it's not uncommon, right? Like you'll meet with somebody and then you'll share at a council meeting, I met with this representative, we talked about this, and it sometimes can be a bit uncomfortable for other members of council that may not have had that opportunity or feel like they're not getting the same information. So what this rule will do is to add a statement that, and I'm just going to read it here because I think it lays it out pretty well. But if personally invited, a member of council may meet with state, federal, or tribal representatives. And if possible, we ask that you notify the city manager in advance of the meeting. The city manager can arrange for talking points or information on any underlying issues that may already be happening. She can share concerns with the topics or any work that's already in progress, right? So there might be things that representatives want to chat with you about that the city's already working on in some way, and so being able to have access to that information to understand anything that we might have been doing up to that point could be very helpful for you in that meeting. Then following the meeting, provide a follow-up to the city manager and to the mayor for visibility. And the city manager may share that information with the council for awareness. And we also add that it's always a best practice to consider inviting the mayor or another member of council to join in on the meeting. We're not requiring that. We're just saying something to consider if maybe another one of your colleagues might be interested in attending that meeting. So again, this rule isn't intended to limit your interactions with our representatives. This is really just trying to provide a space for that information to be shared and to give you the tools that you need to be successful in those meetings. All right, thank you for the opportunity to present these items. Thank you for your discussions in January at your retreat that helped really lay the foundation for some of these amendments. And I am ready to bring these amendments back to you as early as next week for adoption, but of course that's really dependent upon the discussion here tonight, any direction that you may be giving to me, and kind of depending on that, we'll adjust if necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. And great job condensing everything that we talked about into coherent sentences. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Stacy. Agreed. Thank you for taking the time to get all of this into a simple and easy to follow presentation and a lot of work on the document itself. I was following along in the track changes version and just had a note on the 4.02 future agenda item requests item. In the final paragraph on page 5, it says that if the city manager places the item on an agenda as a formal fair, the council member requesting the fair will present the topic to the council for consideration, and then says this is not a time for discussion or explanations. And I just wonder if that's a little self-contradictory in saying that it's not time for, I'm thinking maybe we just take out the word explanations. If the council member who put it forward is going to be explaining the topic to or presenting the topic to council for consideration, then that sort of seems to nullify their ability to do that, unless I'm completely misreading what that meant.
If I might comment, I think that was more in the purpose of that, Councilmember House, Mayor, and Council, thank you. I think that was more toward comments and explanations from other council members, not the council member who asked for the fair. Stacy, I'll defer to you. I know we worked together on it, but that's what I recalled.
Yes, I believe that that was the intent, but I certainly hear what you're saying, Councilmember House, and I think that there may be a way for us to adjust the language a bit to better reflect that, you know, council member says, hey, I want to talk about this, but can't provide any explanation as to why. So I think there's a way that we can accomplish both, and that's something that I can bring back with those final amendments for consideration if that works for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Sterling.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. This is really just a comment to City Manager Keene. When you got the job for City Manager, you had mentioned that you were going to hit the ground running, and this and other initiatives, I think, are great examples of that. So I just really wanted to thank you and Vice City Manager Anderson, because I know that you guys work in tandem on these type of things, for really digging into the details and staying true to your word. This is exactly what we were hoping for as an output. And I know that there's a lot more to it and a lot more team behind it than just y'all, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And yes, I would say that we have a great team working on this. And I actually think this is one that has been really exciting to work on and bring these forward. So you'll see more.
Council, any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Spence.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is about something that's not addressed in these amendments. Do our rules of procedure include procedures for an emergency meeting either during the summer break or during the rest of the year on a particular day of the week? That, say we've had a meeting, a regular meeting on Tuesday, but an emergency issue comes up on Thursday. Do we have other sections of our rules that provide for calling an emergency session?
Thank you for the question. Yes, there are some areas within the rules of procedure that do address emergency meetings. The first is under 3.02, which is our special meetings. There's a provision there that if an emergency requires an earlier meeting of council than allowed by this rule, Rule 3.5 pertaining to emergency meetings shall be followed. So that kind of sets the stage, and then we have a section that's dedicated for those emergency meetings. This is also in line with state statute that has some very distinct rules as it applies to calling those emergency meetings, what qualifies as an emergency meeting, and what then needs to happen if you can't meet like the 24-hour posting notice just because of that type of emergency and what happens after that. So 3.02 and 3.05 will address the need for any emergency sessions. I will also add that it's not unusual for things to come up during your summer break that are going to require the council to come together and have a meeting. At that time, we work with the city manager and of course with the council to schedule those as needed. And we have that ability and we have used it frequently. So it's on an as needed basis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
City Attorney.
The city clerk already addressed it. We have done it several times over the break. It has happened. So.
It's not only not unusual, it's guaranteed.
Especially in an election year.
Okay, so we are all in general agreement to these changes, so you can bring them back when you are able, next week or when you're able.
Next week is the 5th Tuesday.
It is, so it'll be
Oh.
April 7th. I misspoke already.
Okay, so when you're able to bring them back, we look forward to seeing them.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the feedback, and I will incorporate Councilmember House's comments into those edits, and I'm excited to bring it back to you.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, we're moving down to open call to the public. And I see no public wishing to speak. So then we're down to informational items, 2 from Mayor, Council, and City Manager, and future agenda item requests. And I'm going to start down here with Councilmember Spence.
Nothing this evening that's brief, neutral, or non-controversial.
Well, this could be your last chance to include anything that doesn't fall into those categories.
I will pass, thank you.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to come with the controversy. I'm just kidding. I am just sharing with the community that I am out of state this week in Washington, D.C., doing advocacy, not on behalf of the city, but on behalf of actually the state when it comes to housing considerations. So we'll be meeting with representatives on Capitol Hill tomorrow to talk about some federal actions that are happening in terms of housing, particularly multifamily housing, and looking at considerations that will have major impacts for the state of Arizona. So looking forward to that, and I will see you all not next week, but the week after.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I have a couple of exciting updates. Saturday, I was honored to attend the 44th Annual Environmental Excellence Awards, along with the mayor and some of our amazing staff. And the Downtown Connection Center was recognized with a Cascadia Award for Sustainable Built Environment. And I do want to do a special thank you to everyone who attended, but also to Mountain Lion and to the mayor for giving me the opportunity to give the acceptance speech. It was definitely a highlight of I don't know, my 5 years being on council. So thank you. Last night, I was on a panel discussion with women business leaders at CCC. We talked about how we got into doing our businesses and how we keep ourselves balanced between work and personal growth. And that's always a good discussion to have. It was a great evening, and I do want to thank CCC for hosting. Tomorrow, I will be on a tour of the Purina plant, and I'm excited. I have not done that yet, so it should be good.
Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you. Not much. Tonight, I am very excited to announce that I'm going over to Lowell at 8:30 p.m. to sit in their Universe Theater, which has a giant LED screen, flat screen that wraps 110 degrees around 170 seats, to watch The Empire Strikes Back.
Thank you for reminding me, because I have tickets to that, and I had completely spaced that I was going. Thank you.
Well, I'll see you there. You can sit with my family.
I have an extra ticket if anyone wants to go. Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of things here. I wanted to thank Council for asking all the right questions at our productive and successful City Goals retreat this past week that I had to attend remotely, as I was attending the Arizona Leagues and the Arizona League of Towns and Cities Civic Craft Leadership Summit in Cottonwood. At this gathering of local elected officials from every corner of our state, we had an impactful discussion covering local business development and retention, tourism, and water usage. It was super refreshing to hear other local leaders and how their councils work or don't necessarily always work together. And it always brings me solace as to how remarkably functional we are here in Flagstaff as a council that has civil discourse and can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Shout out to former Councilmember Deb Harris. That's not always the case with every council, and it's at these events where I am reminded that the mayor and vice mayor of Cottonwood send their best wishes to all of us, especially you, mayor and vice mayor. Also, I wanted to give a huge shout out to our water conservation specialist, Emily Mellahorn, for all of her hard work she put into the World Water Day celebration at Slide Rock State Park this past Saturday. Emily, Flagstaff Water Commissioner Ron Doba, I think he's a water commissioner. If I'm wrong, please set the record straight. Sedona Councilmember Furman and myself, in concert with the Coconino Plateau Watershed Advisory Council, helped represent the Coconino Plateau Watershed Partnership efforts for water resilience and education here in northern Arizona at that event at Slide Rock. The turnout was impressive, and Emily did a bang-up job, as always, organizing the entire thing, or her part in it. I will be also putting on the hard hat tomorrow, and I'll see you at Purina, Vice Mayor, which is kind of super impactful for me. As a child growing up, my best friend was Ramon Martinez, and he is now the overall manager of the place. So it'll be nice to see him again and rekindle that friendship.
Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, I attended our virtual meeting, and the mayor was in attendance for our first steering committee meeting for the Healing Center, which is the medically assisted detox and bigger. And so we're just putting together where we take our next steps, and we didn't get state funding this year, but that was a long-term goal anyway. We're still moving forward on what to do as soon as this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we've got some tours of other facilities getting scheduled, as well as a potential site here in Flagstaff over the next couple of weeks. Also, I'll be at the tour at Purina tomorrow. And Thursday, there's a Mountain Line meeting at the Connection Center, as well as the Sustainability Showcase that highlights Flagstaff Sustainability Grant recipients at the Market of Dreams from 4:30 to 6:30. I'm looking forward to attending that as well. Thank you.
Last Thursday evening, I was very proud to attend the STEMmies, the Flagstaff STEM City holds these every year, and some great recipients were gifted these STEMI awards. Very excited to see Councilmember Spence there with the Grand Canyon Wolf Recovery Project, one of my favorite organizations. They won a STEMI. Student Davis Yee from BASIS won a STEMI. Nestle Purina Pet Care was the business of the year, so you can congratulate them tomorrow. And Stephanie Whitcomb, who is a teacher at Seacrest Elementary, was the educator of the year. And very special, they created a Lifetime Achievement Award this year, and Chris Lugenbuehl was the recipient of that. And as we all know, Chris is I don't know if he likes being called the grandfather of dark skies, but he has been instrumental in Flagstaff becoming the first international dark sky city, for the drafting of our lighting codes, and for so much more. He was so deserving of that. Then on, I guess it was Friday, I testified before the Arizona Transportation Board on our Arizona Smart Grant for John Wesley Powell Boulevard, and we were awarded that grant. And attended the Environmental Excellence Awards as a guest of the Flynn Foundation, who also won an award. And on Thursday, I am currently serving on the Arizona Commission on the Arts, and we have a board meeting in the Verde Valley and a reception after that. So I'll be there most of the day on Thursday. And the Arts Commission staff will be in Heritage Square from 3 to 5 on Friday with all kinds of information about grant programs. So if there's an organization that's thinking about applying for a grant, or an individual artist who's thinking about applying for a grant or just wants more information, you could meet with staff there. And Councilmember Aslan, what time does the movie start?
I think it starts at 8:30. If you want a good seat, you might want to get there earlier.
Yeah, it's first come, first serve. Once again, I have an extra ticket. And that's all I have. City Manager?
Mayor, Council, I have just one update, and then Heidi is going to provide some more details for the tour tomorrow. I did just want to recognize members of our team, specifically in engineering, development engineering, in police and fire and code, for quickly stepping, and legal, for quickly stepping in with a situation dealing with the Town Place Suites Hotel. It's the hotel on 66 that has not completed construction. Our team has acted pretty quickly, and we actually, today, there's a fence going up that the city has been working on with a private company. We're looking at our legal avenues, and we'll likely be bringing that back to council as well. But just want to recognize Paul Mood, David Millis, our fire and police chief, Shannon, Christina Rubaclava, Kevin Fensel, Amy Tressler, and Kevin and Reggie and Code. It's been a big group effort, and not something that's pleasant to deal with in this community. So just thanks to the team for dealing with that.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. For Nestle Purina, it's from 2 to 4, so if you show up at 2, you're late. I'm just kidding. 1:45 would be nice, because you have to go to the guard gate and get a badge, and then they're going to tell you where to go to the visitor parking area so that you can park. And then if you've ever been there, you have to kind of take quite a walk to get into the main lobby. Once you're there, they're telling you what not to wear. So I just thought you might want to know this, because I was kind of shocked that they want you to take off all jewelry, watches, and earrings. So don't glam up tomorrow, just glam down. They do not want you to have a shirt with buttons. So no shirts with buttons. I know that I'd be that person. You can wear pants, jeans, they're fine. You have to have closed-toe shoes, so don't wear sandals. And I love this one. If you have a hairnet at home, please wear it. If not, you will be given a hairnet or you will be given a helmet to wear. So I don't know, I guess I'll dig out that hairnet. And they will provide you with glasses, hearing protection, anything else that we might need for the tour. But I just thought that you wouldn't want to be caught off guard and then have to go back to the car and take, items off. So I look forward to seeing you there.
I hope they have a hairnet for my face.
All right, thank you, everyone, and we are adjourned.